I don't know if you realise this, Alex, but when you were doing that, I think Bob could see it too. Like we get like a behind the scenes look at what's
Oh
going
yeah,
on there. It's just lots of manoeuvring going
yeah.
on there.
It's not staying the whole time, but I just thought it'd be good for the intro. But I had to
That's good.
manipulate
I
him.
respect it. I respect it.
My question is, like, we're in the airport. Like, what's the deal there? Where are we traveling to? Are we traveling
I don't
to
know.
like a time and place when
I
Stan
just
Hansen wrestled? I guess is that what the theme of that is?
It would either
that's a
be
good approach.
Japan or Puerto Rico.
Yeah. I think just for a week, Shoot just went nuts and cut up intros for every show, and he forgot this one and was like, "What's the most outlandish thing I can come up with?" And that was it. And I mean, I appreciate it. The song
It's tremendous.
yeah,
I'm not
the
even
song
being
is
critical. It's just
fascinating.
like it's just funny that like it's an
Yeah,
airport.
it's intriguing. It's very, very intriguing, folks. We're a little later than usual. I wanted to give the Oracle of Wrestling a chance to enjoy his dinner while we discussed all elite wrestling, which is really what was going on. We had much to discuss since the last time we've done a show. We were, just talking about the talking shop, as they say. Right here, that's popular in the industry. Anyway, this is Grin Grappler. Speaking of late, this show was supposed to take place 2 weeks ago. The night it was supposed to happen, my internet wasn't working. I ended up having to record a fucking podcast like some sort of outlaw. It was crazy. Sitting here with my damn microphone with no internet, it was terrible. Then I lost my mind. The show couldn't get rescheduled. And here we are, 13th of September, for the August Grin Grappler. We're going to slowly get back on track, I promise. But it is a special show. Stan Hansen is our topic. I think, going to go on a limb here straight away before we even get into anything. This may be our most crazy match lineup. Like, this, if you were doing star ratings, the floor is like 4. It's craziness. It's insane. So we have a lot to get into. Expert panel, as always. Bobby Two Shoes, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well, man. Good to be back. Don't think I really did any shows last week, and obviously we haven't done this in quite some time. I missed the July one, and yeah, it's just good to be back. It's been a while.
It makes you wonder what we paid for, doesn't it, Oracle? You know what I mean? When you hear things like that, just leads with "I've done no shows," like he's some sort of outlaw. What do you think this is? Brock Lesnar? What do you think he's doing here?
I don't know.
Man. How are you anyway, Oracle?
I'm fine. My football teams are not good this year. That's okay. Still repping my Gamecocks. Georgia's going to beat us by about 5 touchdowns. That's fine.
Yeah.
But other than that, Alex's Bengals are going to beat the shit out of my Cowboys on Sunday, most likely. Yeah. Other than that, my negative sports rant, I'm doing pretty good.
Tremendous. That was a typical Oracle intro there. Very much respect it, How are you, Oracle? Here are all the many things wrong with me as a sports fan. I'm pretty good. I'm happy to be here. Good stuff. Alex, how are you this evening?
Hungry now that we just watched Devin just eat in front of us. No, I'm good. Staying optimistic about the Bengals after a rough start to the season this past Sunday, but excited to talk about Stan Hansen. Always glad to be back. These discussions are always a highlight of my week, so I'm excited about it. And I was thinking about Bob said he missed last month. I think he probably would have dozed off, man. The three of us went deep into the Bret Hart psychology of the game. So it was, if you had to miss one, Bob, that was probably one of your best interests. But I think today we've got an exciting grappler and a wild lineup of matches to discuss.
Absolutely. It is worth saying that I think if you have a certain type of headphones, the Bret Hart Grin Grappler is still going on, I think, in sort of a, much like Mania 32, you often say that about, right? I believe it's the podcast variant of that. We went in many directions. It was a great time. Unfortunately, with that in mind, we do have to start with some controversy. Many of you will have forgotten this. I have not forgotten it. It is in my notes. Bob indeed has things to answer for. Before we can enjoy ourselves, I feel we need to face the music on this one. Bob, you were critical is too soft a word for it. You were disgusted by the result of this poll. You protested loudly on a range of social media platforms. Was pretty stunned to see that post on LinkedIn show up.
Tout.
You were very mad indeed. Yes, indeed. You were very mad about Stan Hansen winning this. You went as far to criticize the whole system. In response, we have now changed that system, which we'll get into after we've talked about Stan Hansen. Do you have any comment about the controversy you caused? It was quite the ordeal.
Now that I've actually watched the matches, he was the best choice to win. So I was wrong on that. And if we were still doing it the old way this month, I would have probably voted for like Arn Anderson anyway. So,
Yeah.
the kind of crux of my argument was like, the same sort of wrestlers are picked every month, but also I would have probably voted.
And by that you mean good wrestlers,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But
That's fair.
no, it was the right choice.
Well,
in hindsight.
Let me tell you something.
I'll tell you what. Next month we'll watch 6 Theory matches. We'll watch 6 Austin Theory.
Oracle,
How about
you don't even need to kid about it. Wait until you see I've got a long list of contenders. We're going to go around the hall and we're all going to pick one. If we can't decide on a consensus, the chat will decide for us. There are about 8 names. One of them is a famous Bob favorite. We'll get into this later. There's much to discuss. But first, let's talk Stan Hansen. Now, this is a really interesting one. We always start these shows with like our personal fandoms. And Stan is interesting because Stan doesn't have really like an extended US TV run in like modern times, right? Like the closest I guess you could get is when he comes in and works Luger in WCW there, and does the Havoc, that program where he wins the US belt and drops it back at Starrcade, I believe. So that's an interesting piece of this. Oracle, I'll start with you. What's your kind of Stan Hansen fandom? Is he a guy you've purely come to learn and love as like a sort of guy who watches, like we are now, like nerds, or was there experience beyond that? Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was essentially my fandom with Stan Hansen. I think he retired in 2001, so like I'd only been watching for like a year, 18 months by the time he retired. He had some runs in the territories in the 70s and 80s. Of course, he was in New York, had a famous feud with Bruno Sammartino. Had a good series with Bob Backlund in the early 80s. He had a big run in the AWA in 86, 85 and 86. And of course his WCW run in 1991. But really otherwise, I mean, he did the typical territory jumps and stuff in the 80s, every once in a while, but he was an international wrestler. Japan was his home. He was in New Japan first, and then kind of became a dedicated loyalist to Giant Baba and was in All Japan all the way through the, I guess, split. And of course, he had a great run in Puerto Rico, and we'll get to cover that Cologne feud today. But yeah, man, he was all over the place, and I just kind of watched that stuff through the lens of message boards and YouTube, and I actually voted him number 1 and my greatest wrestler of all time in 2016.
There you go, folks.
Just because I thought he was, I don't even know if I totally, it's just like, he was a number 1 contender that I thought was the most interesting choice at the time.
I get that.
Because it was really just watching him get over in Japan and Puerto Rico and still have that aura when he wrestled in the States. Tons of classics, and like you said, the 6 matches we covered just really just surface level with him in a lot of ways. I mean, he's got stuff that we don't even. I mean, we'll run through the gambit of stuff that
we'll try to shout some stuff out as we go, right? Like at the end of each app, we'll try and kind of other stuff that you guys should seek out.
I mean, I don't know. He just has like this big Texas ass kicker, and he swarms and swallows up his opponents. He's absolutely the type of guy that Brock Lesnar would go slow the fuck down and punch him in the face.
Yeah, Brock would hate it, man. He would hit Brock really hard in the face, and Brock would have enough of that shit.
Like Stan Hansen just had like, he was blind, so he couldn't see, and he would like kill people with lariats, and he just fucking ruled, man. He was a pro wrestler.
I was thinking about how like when people talk about the great gaijin wrestlers in the history of Japanese wrestling, he's like the one, right? Like because he was there for so long. I mean, there's other contenders, don't be wrong. We did Terry a couple months ago, so on and so forth. But like
20 years.
To me, it's Hansen. Yeah, like he was All Japan for what, 18 years?
Yeah.
Like it's a ridiculous number. Alex, your fandom of Stan Hansen?
You mentioned the Bruno feud, and I had to confirm this live and in color and breaking here. He wrestled Bruno Sammartino as the lead-in to Antonio Inoki versus Muhammad Ali at Shea Stadium. They had like a match at Shea Stadium, and then they showed that Ali fight on the Scoreboard or whatever. So when I was young, my Stan Hansen is his very brief WCW run. So like I remember that from my childhood, because the first time you see something, it sticks with you. It's like when I see the old IC title, I always think of Roddy Piper because that's my first memory of it, despite the fact he had it for a cup of coffee. But my Stan Hansen is chasing away Missy Hyatt with like the tobacco spit, just like coming down his chest. I had the Wrestle War 91 VHS as a kid, and I wore that thing out, and he wrestles Vader on that show.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like my first memory of him. And then of course becoming like, internet nerd and reliving the glory days of All Japan and stuff like that. And just learning more about, I don't like watching his stuff from the 70s, like the stuff with Bruno, because when he has that bleach blonde, just like fried
Yes.
hair, it just does not look right on that big son of a bitch. And then I guess my personal story about Bruno Sammartino was, this was about 10 years ago. There was like this show / fan fest in Fort Worth, and he was doing a meet and greet there. And so it was 10 years ago. It was, early 20s, dumbass Mark. And I was working a merch booth at that event. And it was like Cornette was another one of the guests there doing like a Q&A. But like we're setting up before the show, and his table was right next to me and the people I was working with. And like he just goes and like sits, and he's just kind of watching them set up the ring. And my dumbass with no couth at the time, no sense, I like just walked up to him. I'm like, hey, can I get a picture? And he does not turn and look at me. He does not make any noise or anything. So my dumbass, I assume, oh, he didn't hear me. So I ask him louder, like, can I get a picture? And he doesn't even look at me or break his stride. He just Maurices me and puts his hand to my face and is just like,
God.
get out of here. And I like shuffle back, like, I lost something to the table, and my friend Brody's just there dying laughing. He's like, dude, he was about to give you a lariat. I was all in for it. And so then later, like when the show was actually happening, he just came and sat next to us. He's just sitting there the whole time, just with his arms folded, just kind of watching. And like the one match I remember from that show was Kyle O'Reilly versus Matt Fitchett. And so it's just like Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody's widow was with them, and they're sitting there with us. And then the promoter comes up and is like, Stan, how you doing? He's like, good. And he's like, can I get you anything? And he says, Butterfinger, just very matter of fact. And the guy just looks at him. He's like, Butterfinger? He's like, please. And that was like the extent of what he said. So he still, even at that point, had a very intimidating presence. And it was something. It was an experience, definitely memorable. But yeah, he's definitely, I don't know if I'd put him down as like one of my top wrestlers ever, but there's something to be said about just his aura that is unwavering, and the believability he brought to it, and just like the level of stardom he achieved in Japan, which like the people who had that was very limited. You were just talking about the all-time gaijins, and yeah, he's a fascinating case study in professional wrestling. One of the better, more believable ones ever. And I didn't realize until, I just saw the 6 matches that were picked, like just immediately off the top of my head, other ones that were coming to me. I was like, God, this dude's got an insane catalog.
That's the one thing. Like, I'm glad we're doing this because I think he's honestly not appreciated enough in terms of how many great matches he has. Like, it's one thing to have that style and be an attraction, but like he's better than that. He has classics, right? It's it pumped me you said about how he was sitting there, because if anyone's ever seen a Stan Hansen shoot interview, like, that's exactly his demeanor in those. Like he just is so unmoved, arms crossed, he's kind of slouched in his chair. God bless him. Good stuff. Bobby, you're a Stan Hansen fan. I'm intrigued by this. I want to know where you was or wasn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, so honestly, like, I think the only match I'd seen before these was the Hogan one, which, is fun, but isn't, like, on the level of these ones. But, he'd be one of those guys that, those wrestling clip accounts post clips of on Twitter, and I'd always watch him and be like, hey, this guy rules. He just beats the shit out of people. I should watch him more. And just never did. So, actually, this was, like, a really good project for that. And now I want to watch even more. So, kind of made me a fan now.
Yeah, he's a really interesting one, because I think, for me personally, I think everyone knows the archetype of Stan Hansen, even if they've not seen him wrestle. Because, listen, we can all dunk on the dude, but JBL, he made sure that you knew who the fuck Stan Hansen was. If anyone threw a clothesline with like 10% velocity, JBL was like, Stan Hansen. Like, I think there are a lot of people that have not seen Stan Hansen wrestle that know he's like the big rough Texan brawler. You know, the reason I'm glad we're doing this show is, even if Bob's very upset about it, is I like the idea that we can shine a light on this. Is not just a great, brawler, horse, attraction. In a way that, honestly, frankly, Brody was in a lot of ways. Brody was a great attraction who didn't have many great matches, right? By contrast, Hansen has got a match catalog that can hold up against just about anyone. I mean, Oracle's just said he was ranked number 1 for him, and I think anyone that watches these shows know that means something. So I'm really excited to kind of look in for that lens. Quickly, we'll do this because Manny is a member of our family. A question definitely not related to Stan Hansen. He says, and I quote, Oracle, I need to know. He needs to know, Oracle. Have you seen Danielson and Necro from PWG? If so, which one is better, Joe Necro or Danielson Necro? I think the PWG might be more awesome.
I've never seen Danielson and Necro.
Okay.
I've seen Key and Necro. I've seen Key Necro from WrestleMania weekend 22, and I've seen Joe Necro. Those are like the two very famous Necro matches I've seen. There are others. I think there's an Eddie Kingston Necro match that's highly praised too.
I believe so. Alex, are you familiar with this PWG business?
I am.
Got the DVD sitting next to him, I'm sure.
I know which DVD it's on in my room right now. But yeah, the story behind it's even funnier because it was like Necro being brought back after he fucked up Super Dragon in a match. So he thought they booked him against Danielson to go stretch him. So he just started on the offense. He just starts beating the shit out of Danielson to get ahead. And then he said the first punch Danielson threw, he's like, oh, he's working with me. Time to lighten up. But it's good. It's crazy. Post ROH title reign, Brian, when he was just bald and beating the shit out of people. It's good. I'm sorry, nothing to me is on the same level as Necro and Joe. So I recommend checking out the Danielson match. It is a lot of fun, but Necro and Joe is the king.
Yeah. I know you haven't shared the screen with young Manny as of yet, but I would like to know that he is currently campaigning for Tony Khan to book the Necro Butcher. He believes they should run a Samoa Joe rematch on TV, which I think gives you some insight into the kind of mindset we're talking about here. You know what I mean?
Why not? Yeah, have Necro work under a hood.
Yeah. It'd probably be necessary at this point, quite frankly. Anyway, let's get back to Stan Hansen. Let's get into it. Now, here's the deal, folks. When you talk about acts for Stan Hansen, it's different because a lot of wrestlers, they go through these different chapters of their career and they evolve and simply, other than the blonde look that Alex talks about, which we were never going to do as an act because it's the worst part of his career, it's the start of his career. When Stan Hansen becomes who he, he's full form, he basically just stays that way for 20 years and it's just awesome the whole time. Mm-hmm. So the idea of splitting up, really, we've just done it by years. So Act 1 is going to be the early 80s, which is, his initial, block of work in Japan. And we're just going to move through the years. It's not going to be as much of a clear cut here because I just don't think that makes sense for Hansen while trying to spotlight his best work. So with that in mind, let's get into Act 1. We start here in 1981, a very famous match, September 23rd, Clash of Andre the Giant. Now, just quickly, we've kind of touched on it. The Bruno thing is the most significant thing to talk about pre this for Stan. Do we all agree on that? That's the most important part of his career. One of the most important parts overall, but especially before this. For those of you who don't know, Stan broke Bruno's neck on a body slam, which was then, in wrestling mythology, turned into the lariat, which meant the lariat was deaf everywhere across the world because it was fucking Bruno. As Alex said, they ran back in the stadium. It was the Inoki closed circuit deal, so on and so forth. So that's kind of, I think, the key information about 70 Stan. Before we get into this match of Andre, Oracle, is there anything you think people should know about pre this? Because this isn't their first match together. I'm aware of that. So you're more probably definitely more well versed on this than I am. Pre-Andre match, what you got, Oracle? What do you think?
I mean, the Backlund series happened around this time. Backlund's very divisive, so if you don't like Backlund matches, I get it.
Yeah.
But the Backlund match, the Backlund series is around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime I think it's 80 or 81. And those matches are very good as well.
Okay, Alex, anything else on the kind of just pre where we start here that stands out?
No, most of the stuff I've watched from that era is the Bleach Blonde WWF stuff that I'm just this doesn't settle with me.
Yeah, he's super raw there, and not in the way that makes him great. Like he's just kind of not found quite his identity yet. Okay, well let's get into this Andre match, which again, if you've not seen it,
Banger.
I would argue this is the match you need to see most because there's probably a chance if you haven't seen this, you have a perception of Andre that this match will like shatter and obliterate.
100%. Yes.
There you go. I can already see by the response Alex can co-sign that. So, just a little backstory here because I've seen Hansen talk about this. I don't know how much they kind of explore this because obviously there's a lot of different moving pieces, especially with where Andre's career would go from this point on. Hansen said that Andre kind of realized he needed someone to like actually work in Japan. Like it's great to be an attraction, but he needed someone that he could have like real matches with. And when you watch this match, you really get the sense that he was desperate to establish Stan in that regard because this is unlike any other Andre performance that I've personally seen. It is quite the scene. Bob, I want to start with you because I get the sense this would have stunned you. If it stunned Alex and it stunned me when I first saw it, I'm sure you were startled by this. Stan Hansen, Andre the Giant, a video game matchup in a lot of ways, Fire Pro-esque. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was funny because, it came on and I'm like, I don't know how much I've even seen of Andre before, the WWF stuff. And they just kind of fight the whole time. Like, it's not even really a wrestling match. They're just kind of fighting. And it ruled, man. I wasn't expecting this just because, my exposure to Andre has been what it is. But, like, just an incredible way to start this because it was not what I was expecting.
What about that opening note where fucking Stan, like, jumps in and just, like, walks into a big boot?
Yeah.
they just spill with the outside and the crowd. Like we talked about how big a star Stan, becomes in Japan. This is 1981, and the crowd is going nuts for Stan Hansen. Like this is 20 years before his retirement. It's insane. Alex, your just broad thoughts on what is one of the more remarkable kind of like spectacles I've seen in wrestling.
Yeah, it's you try not to go to a stereotypical route, but it really feels like fucking King Kong and Godzilla, going at it, and the townspeople are just running and going nuts. It's first of all, I take umbrage with Bob's claim that there wasn't any wrestling because Andre in this is about 10 years ahead of the UWFI boom, just throwing Kimuras and Americanas on. Stan goes for an elbow drop and fucking Andre just catches him in Americana and yanks on it. I was just like, oh my God. It's so much fun. It's the immediate brawl. They're just going to war. They do the initial tease that it's over. And then like Joe Higuchi and Arnold Scullin get in the match to like renegotiate the terms of what's going to happen. They're like, all right, we'll start it over again. There's a couple things in here that obviously stand out is the narrative that still is peddled by the World Wrestling Federation that Hogan was the first guy that slammed Andre.
Yeah.
And it's been categorically disproven, but here, either as loud as the crowd is, you can hear him say, "Slam me, boss," and Stan gets him up and takes him for the ride. There's a part in particular, I've seen this match, 5 times at this point, but like Andre is on all fours and then Stan just comes down with this elbow on the back of his head and Andre just pancakes flat like he's dead. And I was like, I've literally never seen Andre the Giant sell like that before. It's incredible. In my note here, I just says Andre is unreal because how fast he's moving, like the technique, how he's snapping things, how he's hitting the ropes. He's even doing like, they're going hell for leather with the like chops and shit back and forth too. And that mat does not look forgiving. He slams Stan at some point. He like bounces a foot off of it. And I was just in it, does not look like a fun experience. But even like the ending where he hits the lariat and Andre just goes tumbling to the outside. And then it turns into like a running of the bulls scenario where all the young boys are trying to break him up and they're still just battling over it. It's incredible to think about how fast Andre deteriorated because you think of something like WrestleMania 6 was 9 years away from this. And he has to work out of the corner because he can't really do anything in that match. And it's just exactly to your point. This is something I have friends of mine that are longtime wrestling fans that just always assumed Andre was always just the "let me die, please." That was the state he was in. And I was just like, dude, you got to watch, if nothing else, this Stan Hansen match because they're doing technical shit where Andre's taking arm drags and countering with like technical moves and stuff. And it's also a classic example of those Japanese matches they would do with big brawlers or big gaijin where it would end with a non-finish, but it still seems satisfying. and it still made both guys, obviously look like killers. So I cannot say enough good things about this. I know a couple of these matches, or at least one we did, Melts gave the full 5 stars. This wasn't one of them, and I was just like, dude, this is like just chaos. This is a blast. This is pro wrestling, baby.
It's unbelievable. It's just it's so uniquely thrilling. It's like, and you mentioned Andre selling, and it's great throughout this, but his facial expressions on some of those sells were like he's in genuine peril. It feels it's masterful.
You called out too that when he's doing the over the top rope gimmick, how his ass is still balanced on it. He just boots Stan when he comes running in. It's so good.
And Stan feeds it with like full velocity. It's amazing. Oracle, I'm sure you've seen this many a time. Your thoughts?
Oh yeah, just a downright classic. I saw somebody describe this one time in a review as like it's wrestling's Godzilla versus King Kong.
There you go.
That's exactly what it is. It's like the only version ever of that, really. Like it's or at least it's the truest version of that, in my opinion. Like,
someone hasn't seen Carly and Batista. Am I right?
Oh yeah. Which one? The Punjabi prison match?
I've definitely not seen any of those matches.
Wasn't there some match on the Sci-Fi ECW where they just put all the like fat dudes or big guys against each other, like a monster battle?
I think it has like 50 million views on YouTube or some shit. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it exists.
Is that the one? Yeah, it's like a monster mash battle royal or something for Halloween.
I feel like I remember that the story I remember reading was Sci-Fi because it was Halloween. They wanted to be able to market it as a monster match, so it was like whoever the big lads they had at the time were.
That rules.
Yeah. I think it was like this.
I bet it was like 3 1/4.
Wasn't like this Kane. Because he was like Big Daddy V at one. Remember he in ECW?
Yes.
He was Big Daddy. Yeah.
Oh, dude.
I think he was
big
in
tit suspenders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Mark Henry, and maybe the fourth one was Kali. But
yeah.
Sorry to steal your thunder there, Oracle.
No, it's fine. That sounds like a match that's must see.
It's good grin along content. We should get everyone watching at some point.
Not unlike Stan Hansen versus Andre the Giant.
Yeah. This match rules. Like. It's one of the best matches of all time, probably in a lot of ways, just in terms of like I said, it's the truest form of Godzilla versus King Kong in wrestling. And that's a feat because it happens in New Japan in the 80s, which is like one of the most incredible promotions in the history of wrestling in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Like if you ever watch those New Japan elimination tags, which are like those gauntlets and elimination tags from the 80s are the absolute like peak of pro wrestling in a lot of ways. And like that is right up there with them. Like it's just, I don't know, man. You can just tell by listening to the crowd. They're just totally like they're into it right from the gate. Like they're fighting, they're tearing into each other. Like Andre is, it's insane because Hansen's a big dude and he still looks like miniature.
Yeah,
compared to Andre, and like
because Andre was like proper at this point, he wasn't that kind of like hunched mess that he became.
Right, exactly. And like it's crazy. Like, and Hansen's throwing these incredible if I'm not mistaken, they're in a spot where like he cuts Andre off with a lariat at one point.
Yeah, there's
towards
one
the
where
end, he boom bangs him.
Yeah, and there's one early where Andre grabs like a hold of him and he just like short range.
Andre gets a hold and he hits him with a lariat. And this is not like he's not like dude. They weren't working there, brother. No. Like Andre just got fucking walloped right in like the cheekbone by Stan Hansen, and it did not look like it felt good. No, like he like went full force and broke that hold. That might be my favorite part of the whole match. The whole match is amazing. It's an absolute classic.
100%. Shout out to Joe in the chat who found the match we're talking about. Okay, here's what we got: Monster Mash Battle Royal. Kane, the Great Khali, Mark Henry, and Big Daddy V.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I just was joking about the number, but it legitimately does have almost 27 million YouTube views, which is like an incredible thing to think about. Bob, how many times have you watched this?
I don't think I've ever seen it, to be honest with you. It sounds great.
Well, that feels like a lie. But okay.
I was going to say that match could happen at any hotel pool across the nation.
Damn. Now I feel bad for going with the Bob punchline. You're already going there, man. That was tremendous. We were going different directions there. I'm sorry, Bob. You didn't even need to take that shot. Alex had his own dunk. That was fun. All right. Let's move forward. August 31st, 1983. Stan Hansen is alongside Terry Gordy. We're going to see this pairing twice. This one feels like, honestly, like a really good companion for the Funk episode we did in June, right? Because this is like, it says a lot about Terry that we didn't do this match for his one, to be honest with you, because this is like a really significant moment in his career. Quickly, I've told this story a million times, but like, it's, it's necessary here. You guys have probably heard me tell it, but it fucking rules, so I'm telling it again. We're in All Japan now with Stan Hansen. And Stan Hansen tells this story about when he moved from New Japan to All Japan. And both promotions were competing side by side and were like, running the same towns to try and outdo each other. And Stan knew that he was thinking about going over, so he told Brody, we need to meet. So in the midst of all of this, they meet in a park while making towns with their different promotions. And Stan's like, the way he tells it, he's like, I just said to him, if I come in, are you cool with that? I ain't here to take your spot, brother. Like they're fucking like the mafia, like their mob boss and Brody give it the all clear. So in he came, and they obviously their pairing became kind of iconic, right, as like a piece of wrestling history. So pretty cool deal. Obviously, he's going to spend his rest of time in Japan, rest of his career in All Japan. Here he is. The Funks were a big part in training Stan. They did train Stan. This is Terry's retirement match, which came, I believe, 34 years before his retirement, which I can respect and co-sign very much. This is a very famous match. Bob, I'm assuming you hadn't seen the match, but you'd heard the Forever business, right?
Yeah, I heard that part. Hadn't seen the match. It was, I liked it a lot. Fighting just through the streamers was really cool visual. And then just whenever Stan and Terry were in there, they're just beating the shit out of each other. To the point where, like, when the other two were in there, I was like, all right, can you just tag these two back in? Just because I was enjoying it so much. Terry was bleeding like crazy. It was a spectacle, man. I loved it.
It really is. It's a great match just in a vacuum. But the crowd, this is one of the loudest crowds in wrestling history, I think.
Yes.
I mean, we saw great heat for Funk matches when we did that show, but I don't know, this was something else. Oracle, what do you think of this famed Funk's tag?
This is another really great match. I don't know. It's just one of those things where you can't get Terry in the post match out of your head. Because it's just like forever. He's like weeping. His fucking rules. But yeah, I'm with Bobby. The highlights were Funk and Hansen just like. You could tell, like, they were like, I mean, if it's going to be the retirement match, we're just going to go at, balls to the wall. Awesome. It ruled.
Yep.
My memory's a little hazy on this because I watched it a few weeks ago. But
what about that pre-match pageantry?
Oh God, yes. See, that's the kind of shit I'm there for. Like, especially with Japan, they do that stuff so well.
Yeah, but it's really touching with Terry. Like, when Barbara embraces him, it's like, fuck, man, that relationship meant a lot to those guys. Like, it's really touching because, a lot, especially that back then, a lot of those dudes were not rushing to show emotion out there in front of the people, but fucking Terry never gave a shit about that. Like, it's a real embrace. It's very, very touching. It's, that's honestly kind of the highlights, man. It's a great match. So I don't mean that to understand that match, but that's the, like, I know you're trying to remember certain moments from it, but it's more like a feel, right, than it is.
Yeah.
It's just a magical.
It's very emotionally driven, for sure.
Absolutely. Alex, what did you make of this one, pal?
Yeah, I mean, this is for those fans of Beyond the Mat, made famous some clips of this in that movie, and of course the Forever, both through Beyond the Mat and Botchamania, went on to Wrestling Fan immortality. I've seen this before. I love how Terry's wife is over. Like, Terry's wife and girls are sitting in the front row and get like a pop. And yeah, you mentioned the fucking summer vacation Baba in his, his seafoam blue shirt tucked into his red short shorts. And Hey, that type of shit. 80s, like Japanese wrestling in the 80s. There's just something about you can't beat it. It's there's some like heavy hitting to it. It's a very simple match, but it's a very emotional match. It's and just the level of over that we talked about Terry in Japan before, but the cheerleaders and shit and like all the people going nuts for him. And it's funny we do this and then the other tag match with Gordo because this is 83, so this is prime Freebirds WCCW, Dallas days, and his like I watched him almost more than anyone in this because he's such an oaf. He's so like new and fresh, and he sells like a baby. Like he gets hit and he's like whoa and like falls over, and the way he like approaches people, it's amazing. Like to compare when we get there, how different his performance is. 5 years later in that '88 match.
Yes.
But this, I think it just shows what that Stan and something he got criticized for, and Misawa didn't particularly care for him about, was like it really felt like he always won or was the focus of everything that happened. And this match is a classic example of his style lended itself to getting sympathy for this conquering hero who comes away with it in the end. With a sunset flip of all things. I forgot that's how Terry's initial retirement had begun. And then, always got to give credit to Dory Funk. He comes in and enough of this nonsense. It's time to grab a hold and throw a European uppercut. God damn it. We're taking it back to basic.
He does do a couple drop kicks, to be fair.
He does. Right? You're right.
Yeah. He does a couple drop kicks, but you're not wrong. But I will say, like, this is the most Terry Funk shit ever because everyone is there to see him get this moment. And they build to his hot tag and he comes in, just immediately gets like cut off and starts bleeding.
Yeah.
So he ultimately is just building to a Dory hot. Like they do double heat and his hot tag is like just the middle part of the match. Because of course it is. Terry Funk, that's exactly what he would do in this situation, right? I mean, luckily he got another, 12 opportunities to do this retirement match. But even still, the sentiment, I have to say, because I think we might talk about this, but anyone that's read Terry's book, him talking about this retirement is one of the funniest things any wrestler's ever written because he says, like, he appears to have never considered that he won't have the money to retire. It's like a year, like he's like, so anyway, I thought it was my retirement, but then a year later, I didn't really have like a lot of money left, so I guess I got to wrestle again. It's like, what the fuck, man? Like, did you not think that through? Just retired and was like, that's it, I'm done. It'll be fine.
There's it's a shoot interview with him and Steve Carino. Just, how they would sometimes do that with two guys where they just shoot the shit. And he tells that story in there, and he tells Steve Carino, he's like, I had 40 grand in the bank. I thought I'd be good. And it's just like, dude. Even by 1983 money, that ain't that much, brother.
He genuinely thought he was done. Like, right off at the sunset, it's over. It's like, no, what the fuck, man? It's incredible. Especially because he actively turned down, like, non-wrestling roles at times, too. That's the funniest part of all of it, but bless him. Again, if you want to see more Terry Funk, I think we all had a great time talking about him in June, right? June, I believe it was. So go check that out, folks. It's in the archives. A couple more things on this. You describe it as simple, and I think that's perfect. It's very simple in terms of structure. It's guys doing their thing the way they can do it. Only they can do it, right? And the reality is, and I don't mean this is a slight of the match, but it's just compared to the others, I think it's kind of undeniable. It's a simple match because that's what the crowd needed it to be, and they elevate it to being like a classic just by their emotion. It's not – there aren't as many ideas here that really jump off the page. It's like guys playing their hits and a crowd just living and dying with every up and down. It's really dramatic and an emotional thing. One of those ones you got to see, I think, to really understand the impact of. Okay. Let's put a bow on Act 1 with a couple other shout-outs here. So I do want to quickly mention Stan's singles match with Funk from around this time. I think he has one in 82 also, but I remember the one from around this range, this year, I should say, anyway. Oracle, what other matches jump off the page for you in terms of this? Do like this first, 80 to 85, that range?
Right. Yeah, I mean, this the Funk matches, there's a couple of them. The one in particular we're thinking of is an absolute classic. Just an incredible match. It's got a couple of matches with Austin Idol from Memphis that aren't bad. That are actually super fun. From like, I think 83 maybe.
Mhm.
And if we're going into 85, there's a clipped version of a Martel match that's great, if I'm not mistaken. That's like really, really good. He and Rick Martel have a
bet.
great AWA title
Yeah.
match.
That sounds fucking awesome. Yeah, we'll talk a little AWA here, because that's 85, right?
85
Is
and
that-
86. 86 is
Yeah.
kind of the big bulk of it, but
Yeah, that's because in my mind I was thinking that for the next act. But yeah, we'll get into some of that stuff because I like the Hennig matches too. Like I watched them when we did when I was getting ready for this couple weeks. I watched some of those.
Sergeant Slaughter matches are really good. Jerry Blackwell
yeah.
match is incredible. The Nick
My
Bockenville
God.
match is good. Like really good, great even.
Which one?
Tremendous.
Is it the Wrestle Rock?
The Wrestle Rock.
Yeah.
Pop.
Yeah.
Wrestle Rock Pop. Alex, any other matches from this kind of block of time, like 8 to 85? Anything else to shout before we proceed here?
Yeah, the Wrestle Rock one is going to be my call out. Specifically, if you haven't seen the Wrestle Rock Rumble, you need to get on that and watch it. Nick Bockwinkel rapping tells us he's got a passion and he'll take the title back from that humanoid Hansen.
We're also we're big Greg Gagne fans around here too.
Oh yeah, he was in a rage. He wanted Brody and he wanted him in a cage.
Exactly.
I'm in a rage and I want Brody.
You shouldn't be proud of that. You should not be proud of that, Al.
Where's the Bisco? Where's the Bisco?
It won't be groon till I get done slapping around Scott Ledoux. Fucking the Wrestle Rock build also included. I think that's when Hansen cut that promo about I'm not in it for the bright lights and the little women. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids, and I got to feed all of them. Like that was what he was talking about. The reason for keeping the belt. Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with his All Japan work at this point in time. It's somewhere around here. It's after Dynamite's. It's when Dynamite's been hurt pretty bad. You can't do much. But they had a singles match in All Japan that like isn't gonna light your world on fire, but it's definitely like novelty town. Sounds like too light of a word, but seeing two of the most celebrated gaijins in All Japan history going 1-on-1.
One of those things is you're glad it happened, right? Those kind of bizarre matches that show up in history is definitely a cool deal. All right. Now, this one's really interesting. Move to Act 2. And Oracle, you've talked to me about this rivalry an awful lot. Of course, the match we're doing is January 6th, 87. Carlos Colon, the bull rope. There's a lot of matches, though. I've seen a couple of them. This was the highest rated, but I don't know, Oracle, where you stand on the best, so on and so forth. But, like, best you can paint the picture for this feud as a whole, and then when you feel free to proceed into the match itself. This one that we covered. Go ahead.
So this feud was discovered, kind of in a way, like a lot of Puerto Rico footage was about 10 years ago. When we were doing the 80 sets, and like we were blown away by it. And there's a gentleman by the name of El Boricua who posts on PWO, who's from Puerto Rico and was able to translate a lot of the storylines.
That fucking rules.
Feuds for us. Carlos Colon promos and stuff, and he's a huge diehard wrestling fan. And so he kind of helped us with that and gave us like these pages long lengths of explanations for feuds and stories, and so we ended up doing a really big Puerto Rico deep dive about 10 years ago, and of course this feud was kind of the highlight of that. And this helped us. Like, everybody knew Hansen was great, but we kind of realized how great Carlos Colon was. He's an incredible worker, and like Colon is legitimately one of the 100 best workers ever, in my opinion. Like, he's that good. He's basically like a more violent version of like a Jerry Lawler in terms of like, because like the Puerto Rico stuff is just, some of the matches are insane, and like there's a interesting connection with the fan base there. Like when they like wrestle in the baseball stadiums and they have to put up like the nets because fans are throwing battery acid and like all kinds of crazy shit.
Insane.
It's insane.
Just like Saudi Daisy High School, Oracle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sell out that gym, or that football field. But Yeah, this feud was amazing. They have a cage match that's absolutely incredible too. A couple other matches that lead up into this. The bull rope match is the best in my opinion.
Good. I'm glad.
Just the drama in this in
Yeah.
general is just um it's just incredible. I mean, just the way they build and tease the spots and my favorite moment of the whole match is they're going through all this stuff. It's this huge war. It's bloody, and they use the gimmick so well. And Hansen's almost about to reach it. Right,
Mm-hmm.
he's almost about to win the match, and Carlos like blocks him off. I can't remember exactly how he does it, and Stan just has him fit right in the middle of the ring and
He
starts
like
crying.
cries. Yeah.
He starts crying right there because he's so mad and so upset that he almost had it, and it's incredible. Like that's one of my favorite moments ever in a match is that moment where he's just like so defeated that he couldn't get the victory. But just an incredible match. Like and it really gives a good snapshot of how great Cologne is, and he's somebody that everybody should check in and watch because his stuff is outstanding as well.
I think this is a really fun, I think it serves a really neat purpose in this project because I think someone who's dismissive of Stan could say that he was kind of like a meathead wrestler, like just, full ahead. And I think there's a few matches that show it, but this match probably best highlights. There was a lot of, whether it was just instinctual, that dude had a real good grip on drama and understanding, psychology is such a vague term, right? We talk about that a lot. Understanding drama and how to get the most out of moments. There is so much of that in this match. The one you just
Yeah.
mentioned, but the amount of times they tease the finish and Stan's whole body language and it's really a fun kind of look at even if he's one style, Stan, there's a lot more nuance to it than I think one look may kind of suggest is my read on it. Alex, what do you think of the bloody bull rope match here?
All right. My Puerto Rico wrestling knowledge, this is like a blind spot. Like the extent of it is that Big John Studd Hulk Hogan match where that torrential downpour started happening and there were like the armed guards around the ring. Yeah. How was this Oracle? How was this dude a star? Carlos Colon. He just looks like a fucking math teacher that bleeds. Like what's going on with this guy?
That kind of rules, to be fair.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong, but he is widely regarded as a huge draw of a territory. And I remember specifically when I was in high school and Carlito showed up because he's his son, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, "Oh my God, he's Carlos Colon's son. He's going to be a megastar." And it was just kind of that's when I started, just Google image searching Carlos Colon. Like, what the fuck is this? So, I watch this and I obviously see his control and is it just his ability to connect with the audience that made him such a star? I mean, obviously, in learning about him, the bloodbaths were his forte that he went to.
Mm-hmm.
But was that just it? He was a local hero?
I mean, essentially, you would have to. So there's a guy who goes by El Barriqua on Pro Wrestling Only, and he grew up. Obviously, he's Puerto Rican, and he grew up watching Puerto Rico and stuff. And he puts he literally has given pages and threads of explanations of feuds and stuff, and that'll give you kind of a better idea of how over he was and how important he was, and
how he got over.
Yeah, he was he was definitely a cultural icon there for sure.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, up until recent years, my main exposure to him was the '93 Rumble, and whatever year he went in the Hall of Fame, when he was talking, someone screamed, "You killed Brody!"
That's
And
tough. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you remember Carlito's induction speech for him? How great it was. He had one line where he goes, just imagine the production meeting, whoever it was. This was Nash. He's like, Nash goes here, Warrior closes. We need someone right in the middle there. Just put the colognes in. He's like, it's like I never left. He goes, and they cut our time. And the fucking Primo and Epico are they still work there at the time. They're like, Jesus, just leave it for a second, But yeah, he's a funny guy, interesting guy.
But yeah, the match itself was a lot of fun, man. juice right away. I'm just looking at my notes here about the bull rope strap match. Those are always kind of like really hot and cold with me.
Yeah.
But because it's the thing of like the goal should be that you're just struggling the entire time to touch the four corners. That's what they're doing. So I'm like, all right, cool. And the crowd's really fucking into what they're doing. And so because of that, it's entertaining. I wrote more cowbell because that's not a tired reference. Simple yet effective. Oh, in my last note, I lost my fucking mind when to get the crowd going. Carlos just did a cartwheel. Like he just does his cartwheel.
That is, by the way, he does that every match.
Oh, okay. He's like Power Udi with his saxophone.
That's like his spinneroonie or his like, I don't know.
Hulking up.
There you go. It's hulking up. Yep. Or like his dropping the strap. Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what that is.
What I like about this in the context of the lineup is it shows like it wasn't just a Japanese thing. Like obviously the crowd wants to see Carlos win, but the reason they want to see him win is because the bad man from Borger's out there like beating the shit out of him. And like the commentary goes silent at certain points and you just hear like people stamping their feet and just going fucking nuts. It's awesome. I would kill to see something like that on TV today, like a crowd that invested in something, not ironically.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, for some reason, like the commentators talking about Roberto Clemente at some point, like Stan's got Carlos in a camel clutch and he's just Roberto Clemente. And so I don't know if he was like plugging a game that was coming up on the network or something, but I got a big kick out of that.
Tremendous. I have to say you've distracted me greatly because now I'm pondering the great Power Udi, great Grin Grappler, and I'm like, oh, there's 6 matches. I don't know. Can we do it?
Super Domino, Super Festus, and I'm trying to think of what else would be up there.
Just watch them twice and present different matches. We could do that. Did they bleed? Stan bleeds like 30 seconds in this match.
Yeah.
God bless. Used to be better. Bobby, what do you think of the bull rope business?
Yeah, I mean, the bleeding right away was awesome. Using the cowbell as a weapon was good. You're kind of limited in these matches because, you're literally tied together. But I thought, for what it was very good. They did a great job with it. Crowd's great. And, I enjoyed it.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yep.
If a young man from NXT 2.0 had a great match, and then to get the people fired up 15 minutes into the cartwheel, what do you think the Oracle of Wrestling would tweet?
Probably tell him to fuck off or something.
How do you respond to these allegations, Oracle?
It depends on how they, put it into their match,
Who are the great cartwheels, Oracle?
It depends on how they use it in their negative space in the match.
You got Carlos Colon now, a great cartwheel. Lanny Poffo had a great cartwheel. Who else you put up there with the great cartwheels? Stacy Keibler.
There you go.
There it is. The trifecta. The new triple threat.
The big 3.
Muda, All Pro Joe. Muda had a great one too.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. This is not carried away here. This is
all right. Come on.
Have some respect for the program we're producing. All right.
Do you remember there for a while when that was just like the default they taught women was the cartwheel back handspring?
Oh yeah.
Just all right, just do this. And
that's what I was running through my head. I was like, well, which obscure diva can I think of from when I was like 12?
I just imagine like Finley teaching all of them. He's like, and he just keeps referring to John Cronus. All right, now we're gonna do the Cronus spot.
I really hope that's what he said. That fucking rules. All right, that was a hell of a time. Oracle, at some point we should do a grin along for that series because something tells me we will not get hit by copyright from those matches. I'm not sure they're policing that particularly closely for some reason. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. That could backfire.
Which one?
Hope Invader 1 doesn't see it. He'll ask you to step aside and talk
about
it.
Hansen and Cologne?
The Cologne Hansen rivalry. Like we could do straight through watch along. I wasn't going to mention the reason that I think Stan was probably less keen on returning to the territory, but you get what you get.
Yeah, this was 87, right?
Yeah, I genuinely don't think he ever worked there again. Which, I mean, shouldn't be like a great achievement, but absolutely was because everyone else just immediately returned.
I know Abby was just like, "Sure, I'll be back. When do you need me?"
I mean, Dutch Mantel booked the territory for.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Good word.
Good booker.
If you would like to learn more about,
Well, Puerto Rico and Memphis. I'm not talking about the last 25 years. Now, calm down. Now.
There was an interesting lawsuit that the famed
quarter century ago.
the famed K Dog alleged some things about Dutch, and I would suggest anyone go watch Dutch's response to it if you're doubtful that he was guilty. Anyway, let's move forward here. As we are back with Stan alongside Terry Goldie, this is 88 now, and honestly, I think this is his highest rated match. No, the Kobashi match is his highest rated on Cage Match. This is second. Before I rewatched them for this, and I just did the listing, my take was this would be the best one. And honestly, I don't know, man. This is hard to unseat because this thing is like an absolute masterpiece. Yeah, they're up against Kawada and Tenryu, which is an all-star team to begin with. Much
Young
going on
Kawada,
here.
no yellow or black. That threw me off.
Right, because this is when an Oracle, you probably best to set the scene here.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like in the midst of a time of All Japan that is ultimately kind of only a setup for where they get once Tenryu like move, because it's all leading towards Tenryu being the guy, and then he's just gone, and then that sets the stage for the iconic 90s and so on and so forth. So, Oracle, best you can kind of lay out where we're at in the lore of All Japan here in December '88.
Yeah, so this was so once Choshu went back to New Japan, in the middle of '87, early middle of '87, things kind of from that point on there was like a 3-year sort of setup with Tenryu as sort of the leading villain. Villain if that's the word you want to use.
Heel is the industry term.
Yeah. Well. Okay. All right. But I'm half awake. Sorry. But so it's basically like this long build for like Tenryu Jumbo feud because so Tenryu and Jumbo were a team together and they feuded with Choshu's army that came in the mid '80s. They feuded with Choshu and Yatsu. It was typically the tag team match that they had from classic matches in the mid '80s. And then once Choshu jumped back to New Japan, it was like this long build of Tenryu and Jumbo, so on and so forth. And of course, they had around this time the Four Pillars came in. Kobashi, Misawa, of course, was still under the mask, his tiger mask.
Yeah.
Kawada was in a tag team called Footloose, with Ricky Fuyuki, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
And I can't even remember where Tally was. Where was he? He was doing something.
Mm-hmm.
He was just kind of around. I think he was still working on undercards mostly or something. Of course, every year there's a Real World Tag League in November, December.
Yeah.
That's the last.
Was this the year that Asuka and Alexa were in it, or was that before?
I don't know.
So it's Dolph and AJ Styles. They were going to the top in this one.
Oh, that was a hell of a fucking tag league team. Let me tell you. That was some good shit.
Wow. Woo.
Hey, Oracle, before we get into this, have you ever seen from the beginning of this year, it was in March of '88, they did I always thought it was legit, and then my bubble was burst when I found the Observer from that time point. It was a match in March where it was Gordo and Hansen against Hara and Tenryu, and they did this thing where Stan got knocked out, and then it turned into a shoot. Have you ever seen that?
I have never seen it. No, I need to see it though.
So they do a double enziguri thing, and they both just mollywop him in the face, dude. And then he goes down like he got shot, and then they try to pick him up to keep working, but he's complete dead weight. And then he comes to and does so they go to the outside to go brawl with Gordy, and he gets up and he goes and he suicide dives and just starts like hammer fisting Tenru, and he's just like, "Don't you fucking potato me!" and he's like yelling at him and throwing chairs and stuff. And
That
it's
rules.
yeah, it's on YouTube. It's worth seeking out. I remember that it was famous from Botchamania for a while, but
That
I
rules.
didn't want to forget about that before we went into this. But yeah,
I haven't seen any of the All Japan shoots. I've seen the New Japan shoots with Maeda, which are incredible.
Oh yeah,
especially the one where he like kicks the shit out of Choshu and they get in a fight and finally gets fired for it. It's incredible.
A lot of people
Maeda is an incredible all-time great asshole. What a worker. What a piece of shit.
That one with the Choshu. There's one of those like New Japan shoots that some people say was like you could directly link to the start of MMA and Pride Fighting Championships in Japan.
That fucking rules.
Yeah.
So that was his rookie year, Oracle Tally.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Joe.
Very early.
Both Joes.
Yes.
Joe
really is.
So basically, this is the match where Kawada gets his name. Like this was like, this is the match where he becomes famous in a lot of ways. Like, if I'm not mistaken, culturally, like with Japanese wrestling and fans, like if you had like a great like match, that was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And like this Kawada match, well, his performance with selling the knee was just sensational, and this was what made him in a lot of ways, and sort of guided his push through the Footloose tag and into a single star with starting with the Misawa and friends versus Jumbo and friends.
He's so great here, man.
Oh yeah, he's incredible. I mean, this was his breakthrough performance, and of course, Hansen and Gordy are just mauling the guy, just killing him, man, just destroying this dude. And Tenru is, incredible as like his just grumpy partner, big grumpy lumpy bastard, as the message boarders used to call Tenru. Mm-hmm. How's he doing, by the way? I know he had to go to the hospital recently. I know things.
I want to say that the headline was a little bit more alarming than the story.
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah.
But I haven't seen much
follow-up. Bit him.
As long as he didn't hit him over the head with a chair, okay? This is,
right.
It's different. The shoot chair shot, I think, is still the real outstanding element of that story to me, anyway. I mean, the bite is crazy, but a legitimate steel chair shot is. I'll never forget. I mean, that's incredible, especially if it was paired with a knockout. But anyway, enough about that. This quick thing on the visual here, maybe it's just me. This is the iconic ring mat, right? Like, if you said to me your favorite visual for just the fucking canvas, this split deal that All Japan had, like Ring of Honor, they like recreated it a couple of times. It's like you can't with that visual, like it doesn't look the same. God, it looks incredible here. It's immediately like frenetic because, of course, it's a stand match.
Just the way it's presented and shot is cinematic.
Amazing. It's aged so well visually.
That's the thing I had to double check, just like watching on YouTube. Like the production value was so high that I was like, this was 1988. Like for some reason, I thought like it was later down the road, just because it looks so good.
It looks incredible, and it's a really interesting match structurally too, because before they settle into like some control, they kind of live in this like crazy middle ground where things are like swinging back and forth wildly, and like you think it's gonna go one way and the momentum shifts the other, and it's like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. It's such a unique match. It really is. I think we could all confidently. This is one of the great tag matches. I really believe that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. It's just one of the best All Japan matches of the '80s.
Yeah, which again, that's a feat, right? Bob, I want to get your take on this because I'm assuming you're mostly unfamiliar with all of these fellas, right? I would guess.
Yeah.
Because I know for like, we'll talk about this as we all go here, but like for me, and I've told a lot of folks, recently on Discord, we were watching Small Japan, and I was saying it's like, all the pillars are great, but Kawada is my favorite pillar by like a distance. Because I adore the vibe of him. He's such a dick, There's so much spite in the way he wrestles against Misawa. Like, there's so much vengeance. He's glorious. So I watch this slightly differently to someone like yourself, Bob, who has not seen Kawada, has not seen Tenru. You just go into it, and Stan's the wrestler you know the most about. I would assume, I guess, Gordy maybe. So what did you think of this kind of tag team epic here?
Yeah, I thought it ruled. Honestly, it didn't feel like it was 1988. It definitely felt more modern than that, which is praise, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
I don't know for sure, but
Well, it used to be better, but
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the part we struggle with. But yeah, I thought it was awesome, man. Like, and I thought the storytelling was really good too. Like, Tenryu having to work the last kind of half of the match because they start with the injury stuff was very cool, I thought. And yeah, I liked it a lot.
When he fucking lariats Tenryu off the apron and Tenryu takes a bump over the row because the lariat is like a destroyer of all things.
Mm-hmm.
The part, Bob was talking about the second half, like when Quada makes that save, oh my God, that's like as cinematic as wrestling can get, man. Like the place comes up and the Gaijin just immediately goes back after the leg. Like there's no like whole shit to it. Like it's just like we need to kill this dude, Like it's glorious. Alex, what did you think of this tag team match?
It's also not just like a push, like the common thing in tag matches to break up a pin. He just starts going clubbering, man. It's time. All right, going through my notes here. When they just I said out loud, fuck yes, when they did that shot backstage, the way those All Japan matches would be almost boxing or UFC style fights where like it just shows the guys like kind of psyching themselves up in the back. And then they cut to Gordy and Hansen and just cowboys, man. And, Gordy's getting the wrist loose. The heat for this was insane. And like I mentioned too, I know this is Stan Hansen, but watching how much Terry Gordy had come along and just how much more vicious and like a marauder he was here versus just kind of like big doofy big guy that he was 5 years prior. He hits a lariat on a respective lariat of his own on Tenryu at one point, and you can hear women in the crowd screaming like, no. Tenryu's like following has always been just so interesting to me because he's just such a reserved dude. I love the dichotomy of the hometown Japanese guys just quietly bowing and waving, and then the Americans are these loud, braggadocious cowboys. Get the fuck out of the way, that type of thing. It is interesting when we consider the accomplishments of a Stan Hansen and a Terry Gordy that the only person in this match that ever wrestled at a WrestleMania was Tenryu.
Yes.
I think that's like kind of a fascinating thing to think about. And it's not like he had a match of this caliber, but he still was on a card.
He was a hired gun in the Rumble by like Ted DiBiase or something, wasn't he?
He was in like 2 or 3 Rumbles, but yeah, him and disgraced sumo wrestler Katao wrestled Demolition at WrestleMania 7 when they did that horrendously offensive promo with Regis Philbin.
Oh no,
God! They ever edit that out?
No,
fuck.
It's the thing of him like Godzilla, Toyota, like that's not funny. What's funny is at the end where Tenryu turns to Katao and he goes, Kathy Lee, and he points at Regis. Like that shit's funny. Anyway, my other notes here are the breakup, how great it looks, how over the lariat is. There's a point where Stan Hansen's just getting up. He's on his knees and he goes to adjust his elbow pad, and like people are like, "Oh shit, here it comes!"
Yes.
It's crazy. Also, I feel this may have came up recently, maybe when we did that Grin Along for SummerSlam 2002. Hansen does it. Why does no one do the double grip Irish whip anymore, where you grab someone's arm with both hands and just throw them?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's one of those things where like everyone has to wrestle the exact same way, and I think it's kind of been those fun quirks are kind of lost now. I think. I mean, when I say everyone wrestles the same way, I don't mean they have the same style, but they have like the
Set
right
things
and wrongs are so defined now. I think I actually want to say there was a wrestler who told the story that's how they did the Irish whip, and like at the it wasn't PC, it was like OVW days. They were like, no, have a hand up here, like it's weird. I don't know.
It's like you're opening a door for somebody and helping them through.
It's so strange because it looks so much cooler like that, right? It's bizarre.
And it's like the whole thing too of like guys and gals. Everyone runs the ropes the same way, and I remember that was like WWE's knock on Shayna when she tried out the first time. It's like she doesn't know how to run the ropes. It's like she doesn't need to. Anyway, back to Gordo and Hansen. Gordy was still a young cat, and his knees were like peak Alliance Austin here. He's got him bandaged, and he's got the braces on him. I was just like, brother, take a year off, take a year to soak in the tub. But it's just, I use the word simple, but it's very complex. But just like that sequence of Tenryu just throwing those repeated insiguris, like trying to get the big dude off his feet, and like how into it the crowd is, and then when he finally does like succumb to the lariat at the end, I love how Gordy goes to protect the pin to make sure that Kawada's not going to get back in the ring, and then
I love that stuff, man.
I understand that by today's standards it might be hokey or kind of cheesy, but I loved in these old, like the Champions Carnival and the tag leagues, how they got just those big ass trophies at the end. We're like,
it rules. Yeah.
And did y'all watch the ceremony? Did you catch a wild Johnny Ace appearing in the ring with his fucking bleached mullet?
Was he talk about disgraced executives. There he was, folks.
This is cool. Stan Hansen, Terry Gordy. Yeah.
Tremendous. By the way, you mentioned Shayna. We've got to do some of her. Remember when her and Nia worked the tag league one of these years in the 80s? Fucking what a team they were.
Dude, that was Miracle Violence Connection. That's my Miracle Violence Connection.
There you go. Yeah. That's what Bob. That's what we'll tell the kids one day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right, Bob?
Yep.
Nia and Shayna. There you go. All right.
Yeah.
By the way,
I mean, this match is deserving of all of the praise that it gets. It's, it shows the level of like legitimacy that like the level to which Japanese fans believed, not only in their own hometown talent, but like the fear and the like threat that these foreign menaces pose to them. And I think that's always the more fascinating part about classic Japanese wrestling versus classic US, because US is always just like, boo people with their own customs and people that are different than us, and we got to have this hero conquer. There, it's still viewed as just like, they know different tricks than our guys do. They have different skills than our guys do. Like this, it just makes it more compelling, and you can see that in the way the audience reacts, like emotionally, to things that happen versus just chanting USA, shit like that.
Right. It's more like this. You'll understand where I'm going with this, Alex. But like, when there's a big prize fight over on my neck of the woods, and like the home fighter, and like it isn't a disdain for the outside fighter. It's more of like this sort of fearful knowing that they could fuck up the home guy. That's more. It's more like that than saying kind of US wrestling-esque, I think. You mentioned the deal where he just has to grab his like elbow pad. The next match has the best example of that, I think, in his whole career. It is, and we'll get into it in a second, but that was always popping. Okay, absolute classic. The tag match there. We couldn't recommend that one enough. Other matches from this time. There's a singles with Tenryu from, I've got it as March 88. I wanted to make a point of noting that because I remember that is like fucking awesome. Oracle, I'm sure you would like to suggest the other matches with Cologne, right? I'm sure. Jump off the page.
Basically, those AWA matches I mentioned. The other Cologne matches. There's a cage match with Cologne that's outstanding. I believe that's also from '87. That might be the actual feud ender, actually.
There you go.
The Slaughter matches, if you can find them, from AWA '86. The Jerry Blackwell match is incredible. Jerry Blackwell is another worker that is just absolutely amazing that no one ever talks about because his stuff wasn't really discovered and never really analyzed until 10 years ago. And kind of a deep dive in the AWA. But that match is just tremendous. The Hennig match, especially one of them, which is just incredible. It's like May 3rd, 86 or something. That match is amazing. Those are the ones that come off the top of my head. I'm not all that familiar with his late 80s All Japan. I've seen, several of the tags, but I haven't seen a lot of the singles matches.
There you go. Alex, any others from that kind of, I guess, up until like the early 90s in that time?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes. So, I mean, doesn't reinvent the wheel, but if you've never seen the match where he knocks Vader's eye out, you need to see that.
It's great. Must see.
Tokyo Dome from February 10th of 1990. Joe, do you have any idea what happened to the Tokyo Dome the night after that match?
Is that Tyson Douglas?
Yeah. And
My
there's
God.
there's a picture of Vader in the 4th or 5th row, his eyes swollen up the size of a baseball, but he's there enjoying the fight with a beer. It's something
I
else.
never knew that. That is amazing. Wow, that's wild. Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, obviously I knew the fight was at Tokyo Dome, but which also that's a weird deal because like the crowd's lack of reaction to what's happening is always stunning. Like he's like Mike just sort of slowly gets the shit kicked out of him while the crowd just sort of sits there.
Yeah, I
Bizarre
remember
spectacle.
a journalist once described that fight as like the crowd showed up to see Godzilla and Godzilla never showed up.
Yeah.
But all right, so elsewhere from the infamous Wrestle Summit, where Hogan was supposed to wrestle Terry Gordy, and Gordy said, "I'm not jobbing to that guy."
Yes.
Stan stepped in. I think that Bob plugged that match earlier.
Mhm.
That's like Hogan had like the Warrior match, the Rock match, these things that are like spectacles. But like bell to bell, that's one of the better Hogan matches you're ever going to
For
see.
sure.
That one he had with Stan. And then I was kind of surprised the Starrcade match with Lex didn't make it on the list here because I am a huge fan of that match. It's he had the Halloween Havoc match with Lex and the Starrcade one, which I recommend checking out both of them. And then
I like them a lot. They're underrated matches. I mean, we're pro Lex here, right? We
yes, as
sure.
we all should be. And then I guess as we get into the closing act here, sorry guys, Bob, if I told you that Stan Hansen wrestled Jimmy Snuka in 1993, which promotion would you guess that happened in?
I have neither of the two American ones, and then probably neither of the Japan ones. I got no idea, man.
It happened in a bingo hall in Philadelphia for a little company called ECW.
Oh my God.
Whatever happened to them? That's wild.
Yeah, that's Stan did a few appearances for when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling, including teaming with Terry Funk to take on Abdullah the Butcher and Kevin Sullivan.
My God, find the tape, brother.
That match is on the network, Ultra Clash '93. So it's those early days when it was Todd Gordon's ECW. Man, he could do like there's matches with like Hawks there and Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton and shit. So Stan, like, I do recommend checking out his WCW run because it is so short. You can almost kind of binge it. There's some good stuff in there, but it was like, they just turn it the tobacco spit and
This is kind of caricature.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I have to ask, Alex, because you had an animated response. Who's your favorite pillar? I'm intrigued now.
Ooh, I was a Misawa guy forever, but I think, and one of the matches we're going to talk about here shortly, I think, I don't think you can go wrong with Kobashi. I think he brings some things to the table that we'll discuss, but like for the longest time, like for me, Misawa was one of the greatest wrestlers ever, and he still is, but he's not someone that I like would put up there. And so it's just kind of funny because like the hipster standpoint is Taue. That's the wrestling hipster. You say Taue.
Yeah.
You say that's your favorite, and it's not often you hear someone just plant their feet and say Kawada. So I was more kind of blown away by the brazen presentation that you delivered.
It's two things. It's the selling. That's the first one. But the other one is there is just like he's like the little brother, right? Like he's just so fucking mad. Yeah, like when he wrestles Misawa, he's just so mad about the fact that it's like so difficult for him to get over this hurdle.
Kawada has the best KO sells in wrestling like ever.
Yeah.
His KO selling is like,
and he's selling of the leg too.
Yeah, I mean he's just. And of course, Misawa was the best like nuanced seller ever. Like
they're all great, obviously. It's like it's just.
Taue is my favorite, but I don't think he's the best. Taue just pops me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bob, your favorite? Can you rank the pillars for me, please?
I don't think I've seen enough of them, to be honest with you.
Do you remember when JR in the first match of a pay-per-view was like, these are two members of AEW's Four Pillows?
Yes.
And like, no one had the guts to correct him because he's JR, so they just let him continue with his night. And that was the opening match of a 4-hour pay-per-view. I'm sure.
Was he talking Four Pillows, he said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was he talking about Jamie Hayter and Ty Conti?
Act 3 is a very different time in All Japan Pro Wrestling. The pillars are taking shape. This year, 1993, features probably my two favorite singles Hansen matches. I always forget Oracle can attest, I will always say this is 92. I even typed it as 92 when I sent it to him. I do it every fucking time. But this year, 93, is like the peak of like old guard Hansen against the ascending pillars. This is like when they cross at the perfect point. And it results in these two particular classics. We're going to start February 28th, 1993, against the aforementioned Quada. This match is not as good as the one we're going to do next. I'm not going to argue it is. But there are things in this match that, like, I will remember forever. It is just incredible how fucking hard Kawada hits Hansen is extraordinary because you know Stan's going to get him back, and boy, does he. He gets him back and then some. The physicality, the strikes on display, this is just, it's one of my absolute all-time favorites. Bob, what did you think? Hansen and Kawada tearing up here in 93.
Yeah, I loved it. They just kind of got right to it and just kind of started beating the shit out of each other. Some of those kicks, man, I was a little worried. I know it was 30 years ago or whatever. It was like, damn, just. And then the spot in the corner where Kawada's just kind of slapping him, and then Hansen just gets fed up and punches him right in the head. Incredible.
Bro, I will remember that because in the context of the match, the idea there is like Kawada's got Stan, like he's fucked up.
Mhm.
Then he like pokes the bear, right? Like, why does he do that? Like, he starts slapping him and Stan just punches him in the face. Like, hey kid, don't disrespect me. It's great, good shout, Bob. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it ruled though. I enjoyed it a lot.
What about you said the kicks, those ones in the corner, where
Mhm.
like Stan's kind of like this, and he just starts. He's doing like Kawada kicks but with like a punt in the corner. He's vicious. Hansen's head snapping back and shit.
Yeah.
It's a scene, man, and like.
Brutal.
I was saying this to Shoot because we did a watch along for the Kobashi match, and I was saying to him, like, you do need to appreciate when you watch this kind of thing how rare it was for a guy to get this much an upper hand on Stan. But that's what these matches are about. It's about like the pillars proving how much better they're getting by going out with Hansen this way. Because part of why this shit worked is because Hansen would just kill some dudes. He just beat him in 5 minutes with his finish. If he did this with everyone, it wouldn't mean anything when Kawada starts fucking dropping him with high kicks and stuff. It is an incredible scene. Alex, what did you make of this one?
That's exactly it. And then watching these matches sequentially, it really highlights that. One of my first notes is like, this is more balanced than any of the other matches we've covered so far, in the sense of like someone, going toe to toe with Hansen, and like Hansen not just dominating and this guy getting kind of like, come from behind spots or what have you. I love Stan's like suicide shoulder block, the way he does that when he dives through the ropes, and he does a particularly lethal jackknife powerbomb in this. It's weird how that's a technique that only few people have really been good at. The idea of it's probably because, I don't know, it's not as safe or whatever. But when you get up here and you just let go, like Kevin Nash was awesome at that, and here like. Kawada looks like he falls out of a building just because Hansen picks him up, just drops him and splat. And I love the simplicity of the counter in the corner when Kawada's trying to do that rope climb kick to the head, and Hansen just catches his boot and just hoofs him off like a powerful old man in the crowd. Wow. And then, of course, like, there's nothing more pro wrestling, and I mean that in every possible good sense, than Hansen hitting the lariat, but his momentum is such that it carries him out of the ring. It's just fantastic. I think that's like the proverbial chef's kiss. That was outstanding.
Absolutely.
And then this is the one. Yeah, he finishes it with the northern lariat when he hits him in the back of the head.
Yeah, because he gets back. By the time he gets back in, he can't even go for a pin. He took so long that Kawada's like slowly getting up, right? And they do like another false finish the other way too. It's fucking amazing. It's like a shootout, right? It's like he suddenly finds himself just trading bombs with this guy, and like he's actually feeling them. It's not, he can't bully him the way he usually does, guys. I will say before I throw it to Oracle, like, as fucking nerds, Oracle and I talk about transitions in matches a lot. This is my favorite cutoff in the history of wrestling. It will never be topped. Kawada kicks the shit out of him for like 7 minutes, and it's like when he has to take over, he's like so snappy. Like it's sudden. The one in the next match is the one I want to really talk about in depth, because that is like an iconic visual. But the way the momentum shifts in this is very, very memorable. Oracle, What'd you make of Quader and Hansen?
Oh yeah, man. They just I don't know. The strike exchanges are just like
Yeah.
the highlight for me, just because it's like the part where Bobby mentioned where it's like Stan gets mad, and just punches him in the head. Like that shit fucking rules, man. That's my kind of shit. Like Quado was just so nasty, and like he carried himself really well with like he made himself out to be like this unprofessional prick,
Yeah.
and it ruled, and he played it so well. I mean, and it was so believable. He basically like took like he was clearly like playing a part, but like he was also like clearly like beating the shit out of you at the same time. Um, I don't know. He's a special worker, and Hansen. You're right about that. You don't see people work even with Hansen. Like
No.
it just wasn't something you saw. And these these series of matches with the four pillars, he has good matches with all four. Great with three of them. He has a match with Taue, I think, in '96. If I'm not mistaken, that's
Yes.
incredible.
I believe so.
He and Misawa never got past good, in my opinion.
No.
I don't think their chemistry was not great.
Never clicked.
Yeah, they just never clicked. But yeah, that Taue match is sensational as well. But
Yeah.
and of course we'll talk about the Kabashi match here in a minute. But yeah, this was two ass kickers, man. Like and they worked it. It was a lot more even, and it was better for it. And yeah, this was it.
Yeah.
It was a blast, man. Like
I have to. The cutoff I was referencing is the next. My notes were, but this is what you just said. This is like 50-50 for the bulk of it.
Mhm.
There's a stand control segment in like the middle, and I will say that's probably the weaker part. The reason I think this is worse than the Kobashi match is because I think there is a lull in the middle because it's been so frenetic. They tried to like take them up and down. And I think the crowd's just ready for it to keep going.
Yeah.
Couple other things. The apron, the lariat, like from the northern one on when stands on the apron, the quad hits him with the knocking down is amazing. The stretch plum is probably Stan Hansen's best sell ever. It is one of them. I will stick with me forever. Like the desperation in his face and his eyes, it is extraordinary.
He looks like someone like in a war movie on Death's Door.
It's
And
incredible.
I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned him throwing him down from the top there, but like, there's a great sequence in that. I think it's just before that where Quada's like going off, and all that Stan can do to respond is just like he just sort of grabs Quada's head in the middle of the ring, like just sort of pushes him down. And Stan would do that a lot, but like, man, is that a great visual for the story they're telling of Quada trying to get up this mountain. And he gets up and he hits him with 4 strikes, and Stan just pushes him back down. It's like they're wrestling for this kind of this status almost, right? Like Hansen's not going to let guys just walk over him. It's powerful, and I have to at the finish because this finish will always stick with me. So Alex mentioned earlier that Stan, all he had to do was this, like pull his elbow pad and the crowd would come up. He does that here, the place explodes, and they go into a whole finishing stretch where the crowd is waiting for him to hit the lariat throughout the whole thing. Like Quada's on offense, he hits the ropes, and all Hansen has to do is frame his body a certain way, and the crowd thinks he's going to hit the lariat. Yeah. He backs up, they think he's going to hit the lariat. Like, they're gasping. It's like a horror movie. I have never seen anything like it. Honestly, if you guys watch this match and you're like, you kind of watch this the first time you've seen it, whatever, guys in the chat, watch it and like try and listen to the way the crowd is reacting, because they're almost in like fear of this lariat because he's warned them. He's told them it's coming, right? It's going to come at some point. And obviously, as Alex said, it comes in the end and he goes flying through the ropes. It's just absolutely epic. One of my favorite matches. I don't think it's the best match we watched here, but like, I just will always remember discovering this and being blown away. It is absolutely incredible. So there you go. Stan Hansen.
On the topic of the lariat, I didn't have any physical media to show off, but I do have the Giant Graham 2000 Sega Dreamcast exclusive game. It's pretty small in the back here. You get the roster, and Stan Hansen's on there, along with Gene Kanitsky, the Destroyer, Fritz von Erich, all those types. But if you're a video game nerd at all, you should look it up because they did some really interesting stuff with that. But the point I'm trying to make, the Stan Hansen character in the game the do, like he has his All Japan music. He comes out swinging a cowbell, and when you hit the lariat in the game, the cam starts shaking like the Japanese crowd would when like they go nuts. So
That's awesome.
So it was so over that they dictated and altered a video game with the finish for it. So
That fucking rules.
Yeah.
You'd have been very. I did the physical media gimmick recently.
Hell yeah.
Alex. I did.
Did you get the SummerSlam '92 30th anniversary Blu-ray?
I did not. I've seen it enough times. It's burning to the brain. I would. It was one of the new PWG events, which I feel deletes cool points. But these are the things. These are the games we play. Yeah, that's a cool venue they run now, though, man. Seriously, that is a cool deal.
The Globe, right? Yeah. It looks cool. Awesome. Like the Reseda thing, I think had this kind of. People kind of, wanted it to be the new ECW arena type thing.
Yeah.
But if you've never watched it before and you fire that up, you're like, what the fuck is this? But the new venue they have looks great. And I bought both Nights of Bola on Blu-ray, so I have no room to. Got to get that Buddy Murphy action in my life, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I got. I got the show where they run it back, him and Speedball. The hot angle they're shooting over there in Reseda? I got the sequel, brother. I got the sequel. All right, we'll talk about it another time. We're definitely not going to talk about it another time, but
these guys think they're working in Reseda over here.
Brother, when I read that quote, I didn't believe for a second it was real. And when I heard it come out of his mouth, I ascended. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Amazing.
It's because he's fucking bitter. He never had a good match in PWG. He got booked there like twice and shit the bed both times. So yeah.
Oh dear. Well, we move to July 29th, same year, 93. This is what I was talking about. So the cutoff here is the fucking Kobashi goes off and is kicking the shit out of him, and Stan just throws his boot up when Kobashi's charging in the corner. That's the cutoff I was referencing. My notes were jumbled, but honestly, that's the most simple transition to a heat segment I've ever seen, and God, is it so effective? It's wonderful. But
that's like an MMA level up kick, dude. He kicks the shit out of his face, like Kobashi gets that shiner going.
It's brutal, like Musashi Jacare. Remember that back in the day, Alex? KO.
God bless. Absolutely tremendous reference on that. I appreciate the deep cut.
Well, Jacare. I mean, most fighters never get knocked out when fighting someone on their back. Poor Jacare suffered it twice. Brutal.
Yep, he got knocked out by Musashi and then Kevin Holland.
The Kevin Holland thing is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Genuinely,
he does a hook off his back and knocks the dude out with it. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, and in the end, he stands up over him, and Jacare's sort of swaying, and it's anyway. Again,
these guys were laying on their back and they knocked the dude out.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, but the one we were just talking about was with punches too. Like he just knocks him out. It's wild. It's wild.
It's like with an uppercut.
It was the shot that switches him off because he eventually just flurries. I can't remember what it was.
And then closing point on the fake sports, the UFC card this past weekend, there was an up kick to the liver that finished a woman on the card, which I'd never seen that shit before. So Stan Hansen, much like Andre the Giant in '81, Stan Hansen in '93, an early pioneer for
there you go.
What the UFC was, it was July, so the UFC was 4 or 5 months away from changing the world forever. They, fucking Hoist Gracie at home watching Stan Hansen saying, all right, that's what I got to do right there.
What a pioneer. So quickly I want to share here because when we did the watch along for this shoot, and I completely fucked this up because I thought this match was after I was wrong. So 2 years prior, September 91, these two have a very famous match that starts with Stan hitting the lariat immediately. And it's like a sprint from there. That is important because in this match, he will not make the same mistake. Instead, Kobashi jumps on Hansen, right? And they basically do like an 8-minute shine. Stan takes a fucking spike bump on a DDT on the floor, which is a nuts visual. So that's to just quickly kind of set the scene. Bob, our final match, Kenta Kobashi, Stan Hansen. Of course, we did a Kobashi match against Joe, the very first Grin Grappler, which feels like a lifetime ago. Much has happened.
A hidden gem, a little-known match, Kenta Kobashi versus Samoa Joe.
Yeah, under the radar one. Well, we did that, so I know you've seen Kobashi in that scene, but man, this is a hell of a deal, isn't it? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a hell of a match to end on, really. Just physical throughout, kind of like I was expecting. The parts that go the outside are awesome. The finish genuinely made me yell in my office because just was not expecting. Well, I shouldn't say I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it to be as violent as it was. And just awesome stuff, man. Just I think this was my favorite match of the 6. It's hard to really rank them. I found, but yeah, this one was awesome.
I think this is, we'll do our ranking in a minute, but I think this is the consensus. If you ask people what's Stan Hansen's best match, I think this would probably be the most consistent answer. This is a very, very famous one. Oracle, what did you think? Kobashi and Hansen.
Yeah, I've seen this one several times.
Yeah.
Of course, the boot to the face and Kobashi Shiner obviously stand out, but the finish is just, I mean, they obviously have this incredible match, but it's just one of those things where I don't know. It's one of the great matches ever. And every GOAT match, which are there's probably 100 of them. I don't know. There's always that one moment in the match, whether it's a finish or a spot or whatever, and it's just that lariat finish, man. That's untouchable. That just already after his eye was swollen up, and here he goes and takes his fucking forearm to the. I've always wondered how did Stan Hansen not fucking dislocate his elbow or break his arm giving that fucking lariat? Because that dude fucking swung for the fences every time.
It's the Nikki Bella forearm. It's how did she never break her elbow doing that? Yeah, I remember that was always my theory. And I loved Nikki Bella as a wrestler. It was that the Stan Hansen thing. I said that was her same thing. She had shit eyesight, so she just had to lay it in every time, brother.
Oh, that fucking rules.
That fucking rules. That's tremendous. Yeah, the finish is, you're right. The finish is so great, you could lose sight of how great the rest of the match is, because you'll always remember that finish, right? It absolutely stands out. Alex, what do you think about our final match here?
That's a problem, man, with a lot of the Golden Age All Japan. As Johnny Ace would say, doing 20-minute finishes, in the sense of there's so many emotional closing sequences that you forget how fundamentally sound the matches are. It's shit like this that, like I said, for a long time I was a Misawa guy, and I still think Misawa is one of the great disgruntled sellers of just being well, fuck, I got to deal with this. Where Kobashi, though, you watch stuff like this, and it, I was so accustomed to old man Kobashi, but man, when he was plucky young babyface, his facial expressions, the way he that's what separated him to me from the other pillars was in his young years, almost Ricky Morton-esque, short of reaching out to the crowd and saying, help me, but just his, the way he would draw people in with the way he was selling what was happening to him. And this match, having watched these sequentially, you can't help but appreciate how this match starts, even without having seen the 91 match, in the sense of all these other matches we watched, Stan Hansen's going to come and beat the shit out of you. In this one, he just takes it to him, just full force, I might tire out, but who cares? I'm going to keep it on you as long as I can to wear you down. And that's great. And it kind of makes the finish satisfying is not the right word, but it's fitting that the old fucker still is just able to kind of withstand what you've got for him. And he's got the bigger club in the bag to whip out that lariat and just knock you out with it. We get another jackknife, this time on the floor, because even this early in his career, Kobashi was intent on shortening his life. His firing up, his Hulk up in this match is just wonderful, though. Where Stan's beating him down, and it's what we came to know Kobashi for, the fighting spirit, where clench both your fists and just and it's great. It's
Alex had fighting spirit face for about 5 seconds.
You froze on exactly the face. It was incredible.
Oh yes.
It fucking ruled.
My new avatar. It's interesting to hear y'all say about Misawa, about y'all never really crazy about their matches, because I kind of really enjoyed the story it told with their two Champion Carnival finales, how Misawa couldn't beat him. I know Misawa didn't, because as soon as he got any kind of power, Stan was out the fucking door. But it's when you compare it to the two matches we're just talking about, then yes, it's accurate to say those matches didn't achieve on the level these did. But it's I remember for a couple years, like Meltzer would always say he thought Kobashi was arguably the best babyface ever in wrestling, and it was kind of hard for me to grasp. And as I've watched more of his early stuff and things outside of what you're told to watch, you know, the Misawa matches and stuff like that, it really makes it more evident that you can even argue that he didn't have like a connection just being a young boy with the crowd. It's just he like earned it, and like the sympathy that he gained from matches was genuine, which is always way more impressive than Shawn Michaels stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Hansen in his book, he basically blames like a philosophical thing with Masao, where he says he doesn't kind of. It basically says is a lot of the younger guys like to really put their matches together in great detail, and he was. I mean, we're surprised to no one that's watched him wrestle that he was not exactly for that.
Yeah,
and I think Masao was more firm in his stance in that regard as the ace than like maybe these two were at this point in their career, if that makes sense, you know. So I think that was part of what was. I agree with you, by the way. His matches are good, like 100%. If you guys are out there trying to watch Stan Hansen matches, like watch those. They're good. It's just considering Masawa is, you know, especially at that time, arguably the most prolific worker ever at that particular point, and he's wrestling Hansen, like they don't quite reach those highs. It's a shame. I just love like the last match is a shootout. This isn't that. Hansen is in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like he gets rocked, and when he takes over, he isn't about revenge. He's trying to get out of there. He's going for pins more than you'll ever see Stan Hansen attempt pins. You see, he's trying to get a pin at every turn here because he's trying to live to fight another day. He's caught way off guard, you know, and he's trying to survive almost. It's just really unique in that way. And you see the desperation with the big powerbomb on the floor and the dive, and he does like a splash at one point from the apron, which is fucking incredible too.
Yeah,
like,
one of the matches, it might have been the Andre match. We watched a match earlier where he does the Austin elbow, where he's on the second rope and he jumps off.
Yeah.
So I thought that he was going for. So when he did a splash, I was like, holy shit.
He does something. It's clear at times he's just doing shit, like without any kind of plan or. Which
Isn't that way more interesting and fun to watch than like something that's clearly contrived?
Well, you know, get what you get, I suppose, as Bobby would say. Oracle mentioned, you know, the marked up cheek of Kobashi, which is a visual that will stick with me for some time. The finish perfectly captures the whole story, right? Hansen is literally hanging on. There's so many near falls, and then boom, it only takes one lariat. No matter where it is, it ends the night. It's just an absolute masterpiece. One of the great matches, genuinely.
Hansen's selling of the machine gun chops is also great because that's a spot that can be so hokey if like you do it the wrong way, as we've seen in several cases on the indies. But like he just looks like an old man that has, you know, been doing yard work all day, and then someone hits him in the chest, and he's just like, it's tremendous.
He really is. Look at this. This has popped me. Necro and Stan Hansen. Could you imagine? What a visual.
It would have ruled. I know that much.
I
don't know how long it would have been.
Yeah. Wouldn't have needed long, to be honest with you. But there you go. This show any others here from this last decade of Stan's career. Obviously, I mentioned the first Kobashi match. There's one in 96. This is what I would cross those wires. There's one in 96 that's great too. Oracle, any others from this last decade of Stan's career that you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I think there's like he comes back and wrestles a tag with Vader, right, in late '98. That's like a classic.
I believe so, yeah.
That's really
but that
good.
Vader stuff, as I've said to you before, that's one of my like big. I want to correct that blind spot. You know, like when he goes back, I've hardly seen any of that stuff.
And then I think he has like from what I recall his retirement match in All Japan being like really, really good as well. And that was like in 01. I think he came back after the split, obviously.
Yeah.
And had like a couple of really great matches as well in like 2000.
That rules. What a timeless fucking wrestler. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, and his style is unchanged. Really. I mean, as a veteran, you play it differently, but like, straight ahead, brother, this brawl. Alex, what you got for this last stretch of his career?
It's few and far between as far as like my knowledge, not knowledge, but just kind of like big ones that I remember from that time period. Were you referencing Vader, like the blind spot of after his run with the Fed?
Yeah, I've not seen any of that stuff. Like, it's a bummer.
Okay,
I wanna
so
see
one
it.
of my favorite like did you know this shit happened matches, and then this isn't about Vader, but did you know that the E let him and Shamrock go main event a stadium show for FMW in 1997?
I've never seen it, but I was aware. That
Yeah.
is up there with my other weird 90s WWF Japan thing is when they let Bradshaw and Wyndham work the tag league. And like apparently it's because the fee they got for it was like actually necessary at that point because they were so on their ass. So it's a
There
weird
was that,
time.
and then 97, I can't remember the promotion, but they had Taker work Jinsei Shinzaki.
Yeah.
And it's like teardrop Taker. Like,
Bro.
yes.
Yeah.
But from Hansen from here on out, like that's kind of the thing. His image kind of rides off into the sunset for me after the early 90s. So if there are, besides what Oracle plugged, any good matches out there that y'all know of, be sure to throw them my way, because what a whopper of like a 15-year run this dude had.
Absolutely. I love this shout, Umaga and Stan. Umaga was a great worker, man. It's a shame that he should have had such a like. I don't know if you guys have heard, but
I still wish we could have seen him fucking wrestle the Jackass guys.
Well, yeah. Jim
Why?
Ross.
Why do you have to bring that up? We almost had like without any temptation of going down that road.
Yeah.
Anyway, Umaga and Necro for a while when I was in college was my dream match. That I thought
rules.
that would have been incredible.
JR has said that he genuinely thinks Umaga is the best big man he's ever seen. Like when he was on, and like, look, would I say he's the best? But like, it tells you kind of what he was when he was in like 07.
Dude,
what
that
he was
last man
capable
standing
of.
match is just. I'll never forget watching that match live,
Oh
and like, because we're like all standing up, and Umaga does the running splash across the table.
Yeah.
And like,
I was at that show.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. It was in San Antonio,
wow,
right?
that fucking rules. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's one of the best matches in WWF history. One of the best wrestling matches. Honestly, it's just great.
No, and they never do a finish like that in that company ever again.
Oh my god, it was so violent.
It was fucking rolled though.
That match is so clever. Like all of the weaponry used is stuff that like belongs at ringside. It's like a monitor, the steps. They never go into like, here is this thing that I've put under the ring. There's a lot of fault that goes into that match. Is more than just like.
There's
I think
spot
some
where like Cena heaves the steps.
Oh my god!
Oh,
when we this isn't me attempting to plug. It's relevant to what we're doing, but on my podcast when we did our Rock Cena like journey of their acting careers and whatnot, one of the things we did was my co-host Julio, who does not watch wrestling at all, he and I did a commentary track for the Last Man Standing match, and he was just like, all he knows is like smiling nice guy Hollywood John Cena, and he's just like, he's trying to kill this man, and I'm like, yep, that's the finish of that is one of like the most implied violent finishes ever in wrestling, because Umaga was going to take that spike and literally kill him.
Yeah.
And then Cena was like, okay, well, I will kill you now. So ties the ropes around his neck, and it's
literally like a fight scene from like a crime movie, or like
it's like the end of an action flick. Yeah. It's like
a Jason film, like trying to kill Jason at the end of it. And he just doesn't say no.
Yeah.
It's like that's one of those. One of the things that match doesn't get enough love for. Last Man Standing matches are so hard to do because the drama is so difficult to actually achieve. Right, like it's so hard to do those knockout sales in a way that's believable. And that match makes you totally forget that's what it is. People always forget that was a Last Man Standing. They just think of it as fucking when they bled everywhere and it was a classic. You know, like
I'm trying to think of the other good ones, like Triple H and Jericho from Fully Loaded 2000 is pretty fun. But like.
Very different though, right? Very different. Like it's
and was the first one Rock and Foley? Was that the first one they did?
I'm not sure.
I think that was the first one, yeah.
Because it was just like so clogged and clustered.
That's the one. That's the one where they go through the. So that's like the first time they ever did the jump through and the pyro blows up and you get like the electrical.
Oh yeah.
Like the first time they ever did that. Remember? They did like
It's just.
Double count out or whatever.
This isn't what this show's about, but man, it's such a shame that like Umaga's career was so short because fuck, he just was gone so way too soon. Like, poor dude passed in 2010, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so sad. He's like, obviously, look, beyond wrestling, forget wrestling. It's sad that dude passed all that time in his life, but like, the idea that if we were to do a show like this about Umaga, we'd have such a tough time finding like depth because he was hardly around. It's just sad, you know.
Well, I just now put like the 2 and 2 together. Him and the other dude that were in 3 Minute Warning, they're both gone. That's
Rosie,
that's harsh.
Roman's brother. Yeah.
Have you ever seen with Umaga? He was Jamal, right? That was his.
Yeah.
When they worked in its infant stages, MLW, when they ran in Florida.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that spot he did where he dove from the top rope into the crowd onto a guy through a table? It was wild. One of the nuttier things you will see.
There's a match. Ironically, Umaga worked fucking Kawada. Because when they got cut after 3 Minute Warning, he worked All Japan. There's a title match with Kawada.
I remember that.
Yeah, he does a moonsault off the top. It's wild. It's not a great match or anything, but it's still cool. It's one of those novelty matches we referenced earlier, you know?
There's some weird shit that happened in All Japan in that like early 2000s run.
Yeah.
Like Super Dragon did a tour there.
Yeah,
who was it, Oracle?
Foley and Kawada, right?
They wrestled in
Hustle. Right. That's right. It was Hustle. Yeah, you're right.
Which was really fucking weird.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing about that Foley match is that's like a month after he wrestles Orton.
Yeah.
In the famous match at Backlash. You know?
Wait, what? I thought you guys were like referencing something from like the early 90s.
No, he worked. I think he steps in for Goldberg, for Hustle. Remember Hustle was that strange, like, definitely illegal promotion?
Yeah, I remember Goldberg had those matches there. Or like a match.
Foley works Kawada. It's genuinely like 3 weeks after he wrestled Orton in a classic at Backlash. It's so weird.
Didn't Goldberg work Ogawa there? Like,
yeah,
I think so.
He did.
And Hustle was the promotion that also brought in like Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman, right? Yeah. Okay. And Crow Cop had a cup of coffee there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely not washing any money or anything like that.
No, they'd never do that.
All Japan did the. Didn't they do Kawada and Hashimoto?
I believe so in that stretch. Yeah, I think so.
And that match is really good, isn't it? From what I hear.
I think so. Yeah.
The story of All Japan in general is like, in this kind of ties into what we're talking about. The peaks we saw with Stan Hansen and like the just rapid decline. Like Baba died in '99, and then how long was it before fucking Misawa led the mutiny that everyone left and made Noah?
1 year.
Yeah, it's and even to this day, it's an interesting narrative because like the young fans just get into it and think that New Japan has always been the predominant force in Japanese pro wrestling just because it's like what everyone knows now.
Yeah.
That's where Kenny Omega came from. That's where Okada wrestles. Where it's like, it's just kind of funny to compare. At one point in time, they were just neck and neck. I don't know.
It's nice. Wild, man. Like, All Japan, if you look at their numbers now, it's just sad. It bums you out. It's just, you're right. I mean, New Japan ended up being like a genuine global commodity.
They had to almost die first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You get Josh Barnett in the main event, then God knows what's going to happen. But
the mid 2000s weren't kind to either, right?
Nokiism, brother.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating tale, and it's that IWGP video package they always show before the matches. Bob Sapp's going to be in there till the end of time, baby. It was a chance they took, and but yeah, it's I guess trying to bring it back to Stan Hansen. I think one of the last attempts that All Japan really made at that was Joe Doring, and unfortunately, he's been in headlines recently with what's happening to him. But you could see and I love him as a wrestler. That
me too.
The fans that were still there that would react to him like big Gaijin energy, and I think that's
he you could accuse Joe of like he was a Hansen cosplay guy. It's like maybe he was fucking good at it and he's good at it. Like that dude was. There's a few matches in the top of his All Japan run that I strongly recommend. Like I'm not like Oracle, I don't have dates and shit, but like honestly, his best was a very cool love letter to like the shit we watched here today. So. Absolutely. Shout out to Joe Doring. Right, let's rank these matches here. Bobby, what was your favorite match we watched to the 6?
My favorite would be the Kobashi one.
I think while there's bias pops for me within this, I think that's the best match, and I think that should be number one. Oracle, what do you think?
Yeah, it's either Kobashi or the Andre match.
Alex, where do you stand on this?
I was gonna say that the Andre match is my favorite, but I'm certainly not going to argue with the Kobashi match up there.
This slot Andre in it too. Are we all happy with that? That works for me. All right.
That's fine.
In the 3C, Bobby, what would you like to see in at 3?
So I had the tag with Kawada and Tenryu as number 2, so that's probably number 3 for me now.
Feels like the right pick next, right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll slot that in. Bob, what would you have next? Bob's prepared. You see, I like leaning on Bob in these scenarios. I can see he's got a list of some kind in front of him.
No, I had the Kawada singles match next.
Okay, so then Kawada. What was your last out of interest?
The bull rope.
Bull rope was last. I would go the Funk retirement match last, personally.
That's fair.
But do we agree Kawada next?
I can roll with that.
Sure.
Oracle?
I'd probably have the clone match as my 3, but yeah, that
Bob's.
works. I think I'll post
Well,
3 of the matches.
you are a known sucker for cartwheels, so
Factual. Right, so it looks like we're going. Cut me off here if we ever want to fight about this, but it looks like we're going Kobashi, Andre, the tag with Kawada and Tenryu, the Kawada singles, the bull rope match, and then the tag with the Funks last. What a lineup that is, right? Insane. To put a bow on it all, we went off in different directions, but I do hope that anyone in our community that watches this show or has any interest in kind of the old school characters you hear about a lot, I hope this kind of did do what what I at least mentioned earlier. Like, this is not just a guy who had some really cool clips where he hit guys hard and was like a cool brawler. He was those things, and he had an aura, and he was like a monster and all that stuff.
Jips, brother.
Yeah, right. He had some of the greatest matches that wrestling's ever produced. Genuinely, I think Hansen's a part of, and I think we covered a couple of them here. So, if you enjoyed this show and you haven't watched them, I recommend all the matches we did. The Andre one is like a must-see situation. Very special wrestler. Very, very special. Alex, any final thoughts on Hansen before we look ahead at next month / this month, I guess?
Have we lost Devin? What's going on?
No, I'm here.
Okay. I thought you were
selling
frozen, like dabbing or something. All right. Yeah. Not that it means anything, the WWE Hall of Fame, that is, but he's in that rare class of people that never fucking did anything for them that they still put in their Hall of Fame because they just realize, like, he probably should get a ring and a really good meal from us. That's Honky, right? That talks about, I got a $20 plaque, I got a good meal, left the plaque in the fucking room. Yeah, he is what we say he is. He's a great pro wrestling character in the idea of the crazy cowboy from Texas that just beats the shit out of you. But then also, like, you always talk about wrestler like Brett. We talked about he could wrestle anybody and have a different kind of match. There's also an innate skill in having like good matches that are your match with a variety of people.
Yeah.
It seems like he never really came in any high profile cases. Masawa, we talked about, just kind of hit the good, but in any high profile cases hit someone where he was like, this sucks and we don't work together well. And so that's interesting as well. So worthy of all the praise he gets, a great big man, and just a fascinating figure in wrestling history because, like, to an extent, Bob Sapp, or like you look at the Pride fighters that were huge, these foreign men that came over to Japan and just became these fucking household names and just superstars. And I think that sometimes gets taken for granted, and that's an extremely hard crowd to get over to that level in front of. So he had something, man, and maybe to a fault was one of the few people in wrestling that was loyal. And I think that's something too, that just as a man, there's a certain level of respect you have in that. So everything we've said about this guy's true. If you're not familiar with Stan Hansen at all, start with these matches and move on from there. I do recommend the Starrcade match with Lex also, if you get to a point where you're looking for what else to watch with him. So,
Mhm.
a great one, a great lineup of matches selected here. I'm at least somewhat closer to understanding how and why Carlos Colon was a draw.
There you go. We teach things around here. That's what we do. We all learn. We teach. That's what we do here. But it is interesting for all of his longevity. Like, he is definitely more of in a very different way. He's more of a flair in the sense that you have his match, and he will kind of fit you into that mold. Again, very different kinds of matches.
I was
But
about to say, the difference here, you're going to get the shit beat out of you versus just
right.
like. Yeah.
But like, we talked a lot about longevity with Terry Funk, but one of the reasons Terry Funk's longevity was so striking was he went through many different kind of versions of himself.
Yeah.
You couldn't say that about Hansen. I don't think that's a criticism. He's fucking Stan Hansen, man. You know what you're going to get, right? Bob, any final thoughts on Stan?
No, kind of like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm glad we did it. I'm glad I have kind of more context to, kind of like you said, he's a guy that you see clips of and he just beats the shit out of people, and that's cool. But like, yeah, he has actual really strong, good matches too, and I want to check out more.
Well, it's important, Bob, because you got to realize that one day people are going to just tweet gifs of Brock German suplexing people.
That's true.
And you're going to be like, but he could really fucking sell, man. Watch the matches, So you got to get ready for that. Oracle, final thoughts, brother. Stan Hansen.
Yeah, one of the greatest of all time. Still number one contender. The biggest, like, other match recommendation I can give is probably that Hennig match from '86. I think it's May 3rd,
right,
or somewhere around there. It's legitimately classic match. It's amazing.
There you go.
One of the best matches of the '80s. Good. Definitely worth seeking out.
Mm-hmm. There you go, folks. All right. Let's look ahead now to September. This will be a few weeks away. It may bleed into October. Just bear with us. We'll get back on track. I have picked out 7 wrestlers.
Oh, God.
Some of them are good candidates. Some of them are very funny candidates. Once I have named them all, we will all pick our preferred option. We'll discuss it briefly. If we have to go to the chat, we will, or the Twitter, whatever the hell. But I'll firstly name the wrestlers. Famed tag team partner of Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Bam Bam Bigelow, Raven, the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, Big Money, Matt Hardy, and we end with 2 favorites. One representing this particular side of the screen here, the Australian Dynamo, Buddy Matthews. And more importantly, Braun Strowman, representing the Bob O'Neill section of Twitter. Sure there's a few acts we can find in there. So there are 7. I'm going to repeat, folks, because I'm aware it's a slightly dizzying collection of folks here. Asuka, Bam Bam Bigelow, Braun Strowman, Raven, Arn Anderson, Matt Hardy, and Bud Matt.
My God.
The Oracle of Wrestling, who is your immediate selection here? We can discuss this some, but your immediate pick is who?
My immediate pick is Arn Anderson.
Fair. You want the good wrestler. Okay. Okay. I'm glad there's an adult in the room because I fear this could go elsewhere with the rest of us. Bob?
Yeah, I would also go for Arn. I mean, I think there's some there could be some fun to like doing Asuka and just seeing her before WWE stuff and some of the NXT stuff that has 6 years or whatever now, but I would pick Arn.
Alex, where do you stand on this one?
Brother, I think from that lineup, I mean, I would say Bud Matt, but I'm not about to, like, what would we do? We do the TakeOver Brooklyn tag match, the Cedric match from Australia, the Callisto match. We can make it work. But anyway.
I mean, no one else would like the shove than you and I, but we could do it. We could pull it off.
Yeah. I think out of that lineup, Kevin Bam Bam is a good one. Matt Hardy also presents a very interesting list of options. I think there's a lot we could do with Matt Hardy.
Yes.
So, no disrespect to the Enforcer, but I think Yeah, I'm gonna go with Matt. I see some encouragement or some enthusiasm for Raven. I'm not doing 6 Raven matches.
No, I was very scared that Oracle was going to say that just to pop himself, and I was very scared about it. But I ain't doing it either.
The matches these people are listing are accurate. The Raven Goldberg Nitro match is possibly the greatest Nitro match of all time. The Punk Dog Collar match is good. The Jarrett match, where like that was the first time it seemed that was TNA's like Arthur Ashe Stadium show when they had that, and they had to turn away people from it. At the same time, I can't watch that much Raven back to back to back. So my pick is going to be Matt Hardy because if we end up doing that, my only request is the Unforgiven cage match with Edge, which is an all-time classic.
So,
yes,
I think Matt is when I was looking at the list, I kind of scoffed at Matt and then thought about it for a second. Was like, actually, shit, there's a lot there. I have to be honest though, and this is we're just talking about this here as a team. We've done a lot of dudes. Asuka would be a really cool episode, and honestly, I haven't seen any of the pre-WWE stuff because you could do Act 1, you could do pre-WWE, you could do NXT as Act 2, and then you could do this last couple of years for main roster as Act 3. And it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, I know it's a current choice and we don't generally do this, but Asuka's had such a long, great career. I thought that was an interesting one. But I mean, look, we had 2 votes for Arn, right? I don't think any of us are going to fight about Arn Anderson. I fucking love Arn Anderson.
I will say this. I concur with Alex. The Matt Hardy Edge cage match is probably a top. I think when we did the top 100 WWF matches back in 2008, I think my brother Dylan had that number 3 of all time ever in the history of the company. It is legitimately still to this day probably a top 15, top 20 WWF match ever.
Mm-hmm.
That good.
I'm going to try and set a poll here for the folks that are watching on Twitch. But yeah, the other thing with Matt is, I mean, there's a non-zero chance that he sees the fucking show. We have to avoid some Benny jokes, I fear, because he may avoid.
I'll have to get all Amy Dumal. I'll have to get that out of my system before we record it.
Right, who was our? We said Matt, Asuka. We said fucking Arn. Was that the 3 that we said? Believe, right?
Yeah, between the 4 of us, those were the 3 we said.
All right, I've just put those 3 names in a poll. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I have no idea what this looks like people watching the program.
And Raven.
None of us, we're not doing Raven. I just, I wanted to see how Oracle would react to that because every month when we would do historical Oracle, which I'm sure we'll be back soon, but when we used to do it, Oracle, right, whenever we talk about Raven, I'd be like, not any good, right? I would just give Oracle a chance to remind everyone.
I agree with you, though. Also, we do need to inject some femininity into this, and I'm trying to think of for potential future episodes who the nominees could be. I mean, I'm sure Oracle could whip up a Minami Toyota lineup for us, or Akira Hokuto.
Yeah, I thought Asuka would be an interesting one just because she's it's modern, but there's also a real career there. It's we'll eventually get there. I mean, the thing is, I think we all have a lot of fun with these. This is just year 1, so when we circle back around to March, April, we're going to get through the wrestlers.
The fortunate part is there's a lot of wrestlers out there.
Yes. Well,
I can't wait till the Jeff Jarrett one personally, but
Becky would be interesting for who?
Seth Rollins.
Don't you do that? Come on now, Lawler and Jarrett versus the Moondog. You'd pop for that.
No. Jeff would be great. Becky, I'm trying to think of. She had that match with Sasha at Takeover, which fucking ruled, and then she breathed heavy in a lot of promos.
The Bianca matches were great. The second Bianca match.
SummerSlam one. Sorry.
I really set myself up for that, right? That's terrible.
Yeah. No, Becky.
Wait.
Ebbed and flowed.
This appears to be a major omission on my part. I feel like I've failed the system here.
What a failure.
I know, man. Scrolling through birthday lists.
That's okay.
I've definitely missed. Okay, we have a problem here, it appears. It appears that the poll is 50-50 for Matt Hardy and Asuka. So there's only one way to settle this. Let's be fair. Bob, Matt Hardy or Asuka? Just to make sure you have no complaints. You pick. You do it your way. Bob, you're going to make the decision.
Oh, man. That's actually really tough.
Go with your gut, Bobby. What does your heart say?
Asuka.
My God. There you go, folks. First, Grin Grappler. God, man, I talked about Matt sharing the show. We're going to definitely invite some lunatics into our chat when we do this program. We've got to be careful. This is going to be a great piece of content when I get to the Ember Moon match and lose my fucking mind. Talking about the streak and how the Queen killed. Anyway, say that for a couple weeks' time. Okay, let's get out of here.
I have the T-shirt, the match T-shirt for Asuka and Charlotte at WrestleMania 34. I bought that weekend, so I'll wear it for that episode.
It's like celebrating a funeral, man. That's
I know, yeah. I actively avoid anything to do with that WrestleMania, so it'll get dusted off for the special occasion.
I still have nightmares sometimes. It's a tough night.
Do you remember when Asuka hugged and thanked Charlotte for the opportunity after the match?
So it's that whole thing about like what made it. Sorry, quick. I'll make this quick. Like talking about like what made like Brett, for example, is he never did anything that character wouldn't do. And like all the all-time greats, Goldberg, was made fun of for turning shit down because that's not something he would do. And Steve Austin, God, if there was a Twitter around, people would have hated Austin for all the shit he turned down and said, no, I wouldn't do that. And you know what? I think it worked out okay for Stone Cold Steve Austin. There has not been a more emblematic moment in modern WWE than that of Asuka after the match saying Charlotte was ready for Asuka and then hugging her, and it's just like, and you wonder how you can't make stars. I'm sorry.
We shouldn't do that match. It will make us all mad.
No, but the TLC match she had with Charlotte and Becky fucking ruled, where she finally won the belts.
Oh my God, I thought you were talking about the one where poor Kyrie almost died. I'm sorry, that was very scary.
Rules.
I wonder where you were going there.
Dude, yeah, that match where Kyrie got hurt, I had a really hard time watching that because it's like, I hate that I've watched so much wrestling that I can tell when someone's hurt, for real. And
Becky did a really good job in that match, actually, of trying to
protect
her, but Charlotte didn't, and I was just like, no, Kyrie's
the thing is, though,
treasure, don't hurt her.
I wish I could have told you, you don't have to worry about it because she's going to be given a healing stone in about 20 minutes from the legit boss, so she's fine. So anyway,
oh man,
Oracle,
known supermodel.
Any plugs or promotions? Final thoughts?
I'll be here Thursday with the Chiefs and Chargers on mute in the background. See you guys then. I will maybe we'll do a historical oracle.
Yeah.
Before September ends for July '96.
We'll try and find some time, right?
Yeah.
I'll wake you up before September ends.
Oh.
Tremendous. Bob, any plugs, promotions, so on and so forth?
Yes, I'm also going to be on the Late Night Grin this week, making my return. Hopefully we'll do Fed Dead week maybe, if we don't put another show in its time slot again, which is fine. We had to get this one done.
Hold on.
But last week I also just...
Let's do the passive aggressive.
Hold on a second. You mean to tell me
I'm drunk.
WWE run their second biggest show of the year. You cancelled a review of it because of CM Punk news that never came.
Yeah.
And then I let you pick who this month's wrestler is going to be, and you still give me shit for replacing the time slot.
No, we'll be back next week.
What do you think this is? CBS or some shit, Bobby? You can do whatever the fuck you want.
Well,
Twitch.
No, but listen, if Lashley loses the title to Seth just cold like that, I'm not doing it.
Jesus.
Are they wrestling for the belt?
The U.S. title, yeah.
The prestigious
US title. Just keep the belt on Lasher, man, because then at Survivor Series he would wrestle Gunther, and that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God!
Yeah, but if Seth Rollins wins, everybody will get to go hum at his music while he dances like a fucking idiot.
Vol's got to be careful, man. I'm telling you, because I don't think Bob Lash wants to get chopped like that. Like he might beat the fuck out of Vol, man.
Oh, dude, the rack on Lasher, dude, Gunther would break his hand on that shit. Come on, dude.
I'm telling you, man, if he does some shit Bob don't like, Bob might just shoot a fucking double leg and get out of there. You know what I mean?
Good. Better for the business.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Used to be better. All right, there you go. Alex, as always, please promote your tremendous movie podcast, The Contrarians. Go ahead, pal.
Thank you, sir. As always, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be here. We are thecontrarians.com. This is where you can find information about our podcast. We're on all podcatchers, The Contrarians, at Contrarian Prime on Twitter, at Contrarian Alex for myself. What's coming up in our world? We just covered the 1971 Australian film Wake in Fright. We're going to be doing a compare and contrast of the original Psycho versus the Vince Vaughn remake from 1998. A lot of good things coming up on the show. So I make sure to shoehorn in references every once in a while to wrestling. So there'll be stuff for you to appreciate there. So check it out. But as always, appreciate y'all having me on. This is always a hell of a good time.
I'm fired up right now, bro. I didn't know.
Joe's instantly searching for rooftops.
I did because for people that don't realize, because I don't know if this is, but the Vince Vaughn remake, like you use the word remake a lot. Like it is a shot-for-shot recreation. It's one of the weirdest things ever produced. Like they remade the film literally, scene for scene, shot for shot, visual for visual, and it doesn't work at all, which makes it really interesting.
That's also like quick like film nerd shit. Have you ever seen the Funny Games remake for Michael Haneke? It's the same thing. He made like the original movie, which was Danish, French, I can't remember which one, but like, and then he remade it his own movie in English, shot for shot, a remake, and people were like, "Man, this sucks." And that's a very fascinating thing.
Psycho is we're gonna go off in different direction. Psycho is genuinely like a top 5 favorite movie of mine, so I'm very excited about this. I've told the story many times, but I famously I was going with my brother. They were showing it in the cinema here, and I was telling him about it was the first movie you couldn't go in the middle. You had to go in before it started. That was like a rule Hitchcock sent out. You cannot go in the movie after it starts because obviously, you know, to not spoil it, but something very important happens in the first half of the film that no one expected. So you had to go in. So I'm telling them this. That's a really cool story. Well, my dipshit brother, when he books the thing, read the fucking time wrong. So I walked in the film halfway through the damn thing in the shower scene. Never has a towel aged so badly. But there you go, folks. I'll be back tomorrow with some sort of Dynamite coverage. Unless it's bad, in which case I'll simply not do that for my own health. If not, the Late Night Grin that these fellas promoted already. LateNightGrin.com if you'd like to see the flagship every Thursday night at 9 Eastern. Otherwise, you could see us here on Twitch almost every fucking day at this point. Keep grinning. Speak soon. In the meantime, enjoy this outro. All hell.